All right, so somehow we have made it up all the way up to 50 episodes, and welcome back to episode 50 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. We got some interesting stuff to be talking about this week, including, last but not least, or first, I guess in this case, Midnight being announced at Gamescom of 2025. Squish, are you going to Gamescom?
No, it's in Germany. It's too far, man. I would love to someday, but I don't think this is happening. I don't think I get the time. I've heard good things about Gamescom. I want to go, but
They haven't had a WoW booth, I think, at Gamescom since BFA was announced or something. I know Legion was announced at Gamescom, but I don't think they've had a WoW booth since like the very beginning of BFA. So
it's been a while.
It has been a while. So
shout out to Germany, by the way. I feel like that's one of my biggest demographics from my YouTube and my Twitch that are non-English, like main English speakers, is Germany. So or German speakers. So shout out to Germany. I feel like if I ever do go to Europe, I mean, I don't even leave my house, so that's a little bit of a stretch, but that's definitely one of the countries that I'd love to visit.
I don't know what your demographics look like, but like around 30 some odd percent of my viewers are from the US. And then it's like 15% of my viewers are from Germany, and that's like the second.
That sounds about right.
The second largest
like
demographic.
The big English speaking countries like U.S., Canada, Australia, and then Germany is like right up there.
Yeah.
So
I have like I actually don't have very many Canadian or Australian. It's like U.S. and then it's like all of Europe. It's like 2, 3, 4, 5, just like random European countries.
Yeah. Did they? So with the Midnight announcement, did they really say too much? Because I mean,
not really.
At this point, we kind of know. Yeah, we kind of know what's going on. If in the loop of WoW stuff, you kind of know. Okay, Midnight's coming. You kind of get the idea. Dungeons, raids, blah blah blah. So it is still cool
player housing
to see that. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely really excited for the expansion. I feel like WoW has taken a turn for the better over the last couple of years, and so I feel like this expansion I'm almost most excited for since like Shadowlands. Like that was like the first expansion that I ever had.
I think that for this it's going to be largely what we've seen at BlizzCon the last couple of times that they've announced an expansion at BlizzCon, where it's playable starting zone. They're going to announce a date for the expansion to come out. It says, they talk about Mythic Dungeons Arena Showcase, Cosplay Showcase, developer meet and greets. So there's probably going to be like a Q&A section as well. Kind of the same stuff that you see from BlizzCon during an expansion announcement year.
Really? They just have a booth. It's not even like a show. It's just a booth.
Well, I suspect there's going to be some gameplay stuff, no? Yeah, it is. It is just a booth. That is a good point. Let me say it's developer and creator meet and greets.
Yeah. I mean, I assume they're at the booth, though. I mean, maybe they have like a thing in the opening ceremony, but like that's a big if.
Funny enough, I think last time they had a WoW booth at a Gamescom, there was an island expedition, like MDI style event.
Doing this.
I'm serious. Like a Gamescom island expedition.
We love islands.
Yep, island expedition.
I can't wait for BFA Classic.
You have a video of it at all?
Yeah, it was in 2018. Summary: Warringers Ajara Island Expedition Showcase. That's all they got.
Yeah, they had like 2 teams play against one another in Island Expedition. That's sick.
Yeah, so looking at this off of Wowpedia, that was what was 2018. 2017, they announced patch 7.3 and Seed of the Triumvirate. 2016, wow, they were here every year, was Return to Karazhan.
Yeah.
2015 was Legion.
They announced Legion at Gamescom, yeah.
And then they took a big break after that, so.
Yeah, so they took a break after... They took a break for 2019, then COVID, and then they haven't been back until now, where they're announcing Midnight. So that's cool.
Okay, you said release date. I don't think they're going to announce a release date this early.
What do you mean this early? Normally they announce a release date.
How early do they normally release dates?
Like a year in advance or something.
Maybe it won't be a date, but maybe it'll be like a
season,
a month or whatever.
Normally they give us like season. They'll give us like fall.
Okay, so War Within was announced. Release date was announced June 9th and released August 26th. That's 2.5 months.
Okay, that's all right. What about Dragonflight?
Dragonflight release date.
But we knew. Oh, okay. I guess we knew what
Uh,
season War Within was because of BlizzCon the year before that, right?
I don't know. Dragonflight launch date was November 28th. It was announced September 29th. 2 months.
All right, so maybe we weren't gonna get a date. Maybe I was being way too optimistic.
A little
here.
early. That's what happens. We were talking about them waiting on announcements, and it's like, okay, now 11.2 is announced, and already we're like, all right, when's midnight? When's the release date? It's like 11.2 hasn't even come out yet, and we're already just looking forward to the new expansion.
Yep.
One thing I'm looking forward to, by the way, is they obviously this is a bit far out, but something that they've been doing over the last expansion and a half maybe is giving more benefit to the WoW sub and adding more things such as the anniversary fresh servers, season of discovery, plunder storm. And I feel like we've kind of not had a lot in a while. Season of discovery is wrapping up. The anniversary is 6 to 8 months ago is when they announced that.
You get
Plunder
MOP
Storm's been
soon.
a long time. So I think that I think that they're gonna have MOP Classic coming out, and then they're gonna have Midnight, and then maybe I'm getting my hopes up, but then I expect some more cool WoW related stuff. I feel like they got to be cooking up and having ideas. Maybe not that they're working on right now, but in the back of their mind that once Midnight gets going and it's launched, they're like, okay, let's do this. So I think for the most part, I've enjoyed, or other people have enjoyed, the different things that they've released. I think Season of Discovery ending is a big one for them because that was literally like an 8-phase thing that lasted for a very long time that they were putting a lot of development time into. I don't think they would just stop it and then do not nothing in its place, but not do anything else.
I mean, that's going to be a lot of people that have, let's say more free time, right, in quotation marks, to now start working on a different project. They'll just get reallocated amongst the Blizzard team to start working on something else, if I had to wager a guess.
Yeah, there's a little bit of theories with Mists of Pandaria Classic. Not that it's a big part of the show, but I know some people are interested in it, that they've actually announced that they're doing tuning and they're not going to just send it on whatever the quote unquote best patch is, that they're actually going to go back and look. Like one big example is healers, from what I understand, Dispriest, that's when Spirit Shell was rampant, and also Shamans were really good back then. And it was basically like only Dispriest and Shamans, like you just play 2 and 2. And if they keep the same balance patch, they have that for nearly every raid because the tier sets were so strong. But they actually announced that they're going to do some tuning. And it looks like they have a lot more work going into MOP Classic that they did during Cataclysm Classic. And a lot of people are attributing that to maybe some of the SOD people are moving over and they're doing more stuff with Classic.
But doesn't Mob Classic release soon too?
It's
July.
mid-July.
Very soon. Yeah. I think pre-patch is either started now or starting very soon. It lasts for 3 weeks and then they're doing the launch. So yeah, it's
like the
end of July, I think.
20-something of July, yeah. Okay, I was actually thinking about the Demon Hunter spec. So, all right, Squishy, I need you to correct me.
Growl and I have tinfoil hats on. Are you joining us?
Well, I'm just asking a question. Would they release a new specialization in a 0.5 patch at the very end of an expansion? That was kind of my thought process. Like, would they actually do that in like the last patch of an expansion on a 0.5? It feels like that would be, you would just like wait until the new expansion comes out for the new spec then at that point, right?
Well,
that's
that's sort of what they did for Evoker, right? So Evoker
came out.
Evoker came out because I remember specifically playing it in. I don't remember if it was just the pre-patch or if it was. I remember I was playing Evoker in Season 4 of Shadowlands though, like for fun.
It was during the pre-patch, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
I think that's actually better, right? Than like a brand new untested spec, just throwing it out at the very start of an expansion. I think it releasing at the end of an expansion, well, I would say pre-patch, right? That's when I would expect it to come out, is throw it in pre-patch. Also, I have some new tinfoil. I think Tettles might have been in the call for this, but I heard some tinfoil about Demon Hunter that I don't know how confirmed this is or whatever, but if this just got made up from the Demon Hunter Discord. But I heard 2 different things. One, there was a lot of talk about the puzzling of why the boss is optional. Remember that 3
yeah. Why is it optional?
So I've heard that it may be the case that it's some Omega RP thing, and you need a Demon Hunter to start the boss, to start the RP to get the boss active. And the reason that it's optional is because, well, your group might not have a Demon Hunter. So I heard. Okay, so in this all this stuff might be completely made up. Also, I heard from somebody who was doing some of the quest stuff on the PTR, I believe, and they said there's a quest chain involving. I don't know anything about lore, but basically it was a void elf and a demon hunter that were like aligning or whatever, and then eventually they like like I'm not gonna spoil the quest chain, but basically there was a quest chain in the PTR that was very related to a demon hunter being a void guy.
Is the sunlight reflecting off of his hat?
I thought you were Men in Black, like.
No,
Yeah.
No, he's got it right. Flash him.
That's an old reference. Holy Men in Black. No, so I'm like basically not even tinfoil, just a wizard hat on right now. Like 99% sure there's going to be a new demon hunter spec at this point.
I will say the reason that I would maybe think not is how do hero talents get implicated in this, right? Now, Felscard gets removed from Havoc, and now it's Eldrachi Reaver's Havoc, and Felscard is Venge. And then now you have to make a new hero talent for this new specialization.
Yeah, I mean, you just change them, yeah.
Well, I mean, they haven't really messed with hero talents at all this entire expansion, and now you have to... I mean, that'd be a pretty large change.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if this is the case. I wouldn't be surprised. They said they were going to keep hero talents if they didn't. If they took the cool parts of hero talents and just scrapped hero talents after this expansion. I would not be shocked if
you would be shocked if they just
go. That's some tinfoil. I honestly think that would be a good decision for them, but I would be very surprised if they did it.
Like, I don't know anything about it, but they've said they're keeping hero talents, and theoretically they can keep that true while removing them if they just keep the flavor of it, right? Like they keep Engulf for Flame Shaper and just delete the rest of the tree type thing.
I mean, I think that they wanted to keep hero talents as like the spiritual successor to Covenants, right? Like, I'm not a Dev Evoker, I'm a Flame Shaper Devastation Evoker, I'm a Scale Commander Devastation Evoker.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're kind of hammering even further into that with the tier sets that they have for this patch.
Well, so one thing that they may do is what I've always advocated for is dramatically simplifying them, right? Each hero talent, maybe it has a much smaller grouping of things that it gives you rather than 10 different nodes. And the main point of those 10 different nodes, right, was the fact that they wanted you to like get a little something every time you level up when you're playing the War Within. But now that you're not leveling in the War Within, the getting a point every single time you level is going to matter a lot less, I think, with hero talents. So maybe they thin out some of the nodes and just leave like, 3 of the important choice nodes or important things that are in the gameplay for it and just kind of combine it and simplify it there, and then still keep the hero talent tree, still have the points, and then just that's my biggest problem is there's just too many different little passive interactions for people to worry about.
Exactly.
I actually think it's cool. I think in general it doesn't play out super interesting. You usually have one hero talent that's better in raid and one that's good in M+, or you play the same in both. But there are some times when it's good, right? Like sometimes, what if I try this hero talent in this dungeon or whatever? Oh, I really like the gameplay of this one, so I'm just going to play it even though it's slightly worse. So, I in general like the way it plays out.
I don't really hate hero talents as a whole, but I do think we have a lot of kit bloat due to just how many talents, and you kind of talked about the passive nodes. I think the passive nodes are like the bigger issue. If you take a look back at older expansions, I mean, if we look at BFA, if we look at WoD, we look at Mists of Pandaria, we really don't have many more buttons, like actual buttons that you're pressing than we did back then. The things that we do have a lot more of are utility abilities and defensives, which of course create kind of complexity bloat. But the biggest thing that we have a lot more of is like random passive procs that interact with the spells, and so the spells as a baseline they're not actually doing anything, or they're not doing a lot as like a baseline ability, and so you have to know about each and every single minor interaction, and I think that actually creates a lot of added complexity to a lot of specializations, which makes the specializations a lot harder to learn, like kind of what's going on at each and every single point. And I do think that hero talents kind of work multiplicatively with that, right? We already thought like in Dragonflight things were a little bit too complicated. Now you just have a bunch more talents, and hero talents are very polarizing because they can actually change a lot of what's going on as opposed to just a very small amount. And so, I don't know. I wouldn't... We've talked about a disarmament. I wouldn't hate if they axed hero talents and like really tried to curb some of the complexity with the game, particularly with specializations right now.
Yeah. So here's a question. You brought up tier sets earlier. How are your specs tier sets? Are they? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Flavorful? Not like.
I actually think that the balance ones are really cool. I also saw the Evoker ones. I mean, I think the Evoker ones and the Druid ones are probably some of the ones that I have looked at the most because those are the two specs that I've played the most recently. And the Ellie Shaman ones. The Stormbringer Ellie Shaman one is capital B broken, but that's got nothing to do with
Yeah,
it.
they're wild. No, they're wildly powerful. I think they really went out on a limb and said, okay, this is the last season. I believe they also announced that they're going to do like a number squish sort of thing going on again in Midnight.
I think,
and
they
I
have
do
to,
kind of
yeah.
feel like they're looking at things and they're saying, okay, let's really go crazy with some of these. And the more I read the tier sets and look at them, the more I really, really like them. I feel like I'm gonna miss them when they go away because of how impactful or powerful some of them really feel.
I think the word impactful that you just used there is probably the best way that I could use to describe all of the tier sets that I've seen so far, is that very few of them are just kind of like phone it in flat damage. It's instead, you're getting this massive gameplay altering at times kind of situation where right now for Keeper the Grove for balance, you get this Dryad that banks Star Surge damage, and then you just end up
so much.
Yeah, it just does so much damage, and you end up like wrathing for 45 seconds until you press Celestial Alignment and Trees again, and then you say this is gonna get fixed. So I'm not really too bad about explaining this. So what you would do is like you press CA, you press all of your buttons, you bank this massive Dryad, and then the moment that your trees come back up after on the 45-second interval, you press every button and then you Star Surge again. So you've actually banked up all of this damage in this Dryad, and you just pop off for with like a 500 million Star Surge.
Dude, the Devastation Evoker
that was
squad one. It is thematically so fitting for Scale Commander. I love it, but also like I hate pets, but they're not that bad.
Doesn't this thing do Garbo damage right now?
What, the pets?
Yeah.
Based on a log that I have, they spam either Pyre or Disintegrate. Pyre hits for 400k, and Disintegrate hits for 230k per tick.
Yeah, the Pyre apparently on for AUG on AoE is actually their highest DPS now. Isn't that crazy? It's bigger than Upheaval now.
I mean, it's definitely really interesting. I hate pets. Period. Like I would like you had the Fairy Dragon tier set. I would just prefer that to not exist personally.
Oh,
everything else is cool.
Yeah, I think that a lot of them are very impactful. They're high impact tier sets. Very few of them that I've seen so far are like, yeah, you get 10% damage on your filler, and that's it. It's a lot of times it's gameplay altering. Like the reason that you would play this hero talent is largely because the tier set is a 25% damage gain as opposed to the other one that's only a 14.5% damage gain.
Yeah, we made it pretty far into the episode with me not pointing out a negative thing about a good change, but the one thing I am worried about with these tier sets and looking at the patch is I'm really scared we're going to get back into one-shotty territory in M+ again. It feels like we always talk about the HP scaling versus the damage scaling, and already how it's like, dang, we kind of wish we had a little bit more HP and things would be less fast-paced. I kind of feel like damage is going to go so out of control next season, and you're like the keys are going to get so high, and you're going to get to the point where like you're back and not even close, checking if you get one shot by literally every single mechanic. That's not to say that's always avoidable, right? It could just be an end of expansion thing, but I'm a little worried about a season like that again.
It's okay. We could play the Midnight Beta. And we don't have to play much next season.
Yeah, as if anyone's inviting me to high keys anymore anyway. We'll just do 19s and then we'll just go play the Midnight Beta.
We'll just go play the beta.
Good comms.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I'm really excited for progression next year. I hope that it feels super fun to play.
It's very possible that next tier I am going to be progressing as a DPS.
No
so I'm actually
way.
kind of excited about that.
Are you
too,
serious?
Yeah, I believe I'm gonna try and play mage.
Wait, is this because the one button rotation came out?
Oh no!
Can you play Frost?
It's finally enabled it. I mean, I can barely play Arcane. I will keep up to date and learn whatever spec I feel like I need to learn. Well, it's gonna be an experiment. Basically, the last few tiers, I think it was like 3 tiers. I kind of had the idea that Disc Priest is a super valuable healer. It's hard, but it would be very useful if I played a lot of it and got really good at it, because then I could just be that Disc Priest guy. I feel like every guild needs that guy. And after almost like 2 years of playing Disc Priest, I still just suck. Like, it's so hard, man. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe Mage is my calling. Although we also do have other mage players in our guild, so I might even, we'll see. I guess we'll see. But I might try to prog as a DPS just to sort of like learn new things or to try it or whatever.
Mage is hard. I mean, any pure DPS is hard. You have to learn multiple specs, like Warlock, same way. Like,
I think Mage is the hardest of the pures, probably.
I would say, I think from a rotational perspective and really driving like the top, doing very, very good damage, it's really hard. I think though, from a mechanics point of view, you just have so many good options with movement when it comes to alter time and blink that, I think while it's true that I'm not going to be the best mage in the game and getting recruited by Echo next year, I think if you have a brain and you like really look at some movement from some of the better mages, I expect it won't be too terrible. Like, worst case, I think I don't feed and I do like mediocre damage, which I think is like passable with any guild, right? Like, I think you only really need to push that like really high echelon of damage when you're playing like a really good guild. Again, maybe this is healer POV and I'm just going to turn into an animal and like be feeding all the time trying to do really good damage, but I don't know. I feel like when it comes to anything but doing damage, like all the raid mechanics and like surviving and stuff, I feel like I'm going to be really, really good at it as a mage.
Progression DPS, I think, is... There are a lot of people that take progression DPS very seriously. And mage is... Just because of how blink functions, there's kind of this expectation that you're always like casting and like that, and you have to compete against these 10+ year veteran career mages because they've never had a day of adversity in their life and needed to reroll to something else. So they're just these people who've played mage since actual BC. And you're just like,
oh yeah, dude, they're so good. Yesterday, I managed to finish 19 Resil on my mage, and at this point, I'm basically full pugging. Like, I'm either full pugging or playing with people that I've met pugging. If you look at my top keys, you don't have to pull them up, but like basically every single key is with different people. Like, I'm full out on the streets at this point, and I'm 3,800 now. I have all-time 19s with some 20s, and I kind of took a step back. I'm like, dang, did I finally do it? Like, am I finally like getting really good at mage? And I pull up Raider.io, and I'm like rank 290 or something in the world, and I'm just thinking like, dude, there's still hundreds of mages that are way better than me, and I'm like looking, I'm like, damn, and I'm like looking at all these names, I'm like, yeah, that guy's better, that guy's better, that guy's better. Like, and I'm just like, dang, like, man, there are just so many good players.
I do think, to your benefit, I think that raid is, it's a group activity, right? All you need to do is not feed, I guess, is the best way of describing it, and you can still be a very valuable member to the team. You don't need to be getting...
Yeah, now you see exactly what I'm saying, right? Like, I think how well I do in terms of doing damage, I might not be that great, right? Probably a lot of the people, even in my guild, are going to be outclassing me. I mean, I complain about my guild, but one thing they do well is they do good damage. Like, they're complete zoo animals. That's all they do. But but I still expect that, again, just like you said, I can contribute in some way and do mechanics on some fights. I feel like there's a lot of like that's one thing that we exactly.
Would you rather have a rank 1 DPS player who is a 60th percentile like mechanics player, or would you rather have a rank 1 mechanics player who is like a 60th percentile DPS? You'd rather have
right. Well, it depends on the guild too, right? Like, our guild really struggles with like, okay, there's a job that the range needs to do, and then everyone's just like, not it, immediately in Discord, and then the one guy who has to do it doesn't want to do it, and it's like, I don't really mind taking those roles or taking the L on some fights. Although I say that now, but I've been slowly transforming my brain into a DPS brain. Like, man, I really hate healers, man. I was doing a rookery. I've been trying to time this rookery for so long.
It's just like the rest of us now.
I've been trying to time this rookery for so long. We finally get to the last boss in a good run. What happens? My healer gets knocked off by the boss spawning and just falls into the water, and we can't get him.
God.
And to be fair, that guy was really good. Like, I'm just mostly joking at him, but I'm not mad at all. But it was so funny. I just like felt like such a DPS player. Like, well, I'm sitting here killing all these wilds. This guy's nothing to do except for not get knocked off, and he just goes flying off. Like, I know. I see the DPS POV more and more every day.
All right. Well,
Is it time for Tuttles to make the commenters angry?
No, not yet. I think that Squishy.
Not yet. Okay, good.
I think that Squishy has some.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
actually we did. I forgot. We did actually leave off quite a few things from.
Yeah.
There was a huge content dump, and we addressed a lot of it in the emergency bench podcast. But there was a few that we wanted to leave for today.
Yeah. So the first thing to touch on is the class changes. I don't think we really touched on it. I think one of the biggest things that we didn't talk about was grippy arms or any number of other names that the abomination limb is actually called is just straight out getting removed. And essentially the development notes say that they the existence made it incredibly hard for grip to matter in any real capacity because of how potent and easily accessible it became. I think the thing that they failed to realize is that Blood DK is just so much better at gripping because they have a lower cooldown. Like, you don't get a better, like, Brewmaster Monk debuff or a better Vengeance Demon Hunter or Demon Hunter buff just because you bring a tank. But for Blood, you do. And you get Mass Grip.
So counterpoint, and why I think that actually removing A-Bomb Limb is not... I don't think it's, like, great. I actually think A-Bomb Limb is really sweet. But the issue is, I haven't ever seen a Blood DK take Mass Grip since A-Bomb Limb got added to the class tree, because you don't need both, right? You could just use one. And it roughly does the exact same thing. If honestly, A-Bomb Limb is probably better than Mass Grip even in most situations. So it kind of takes that utility. It takes that utility away from Blood. Now, there is kind of a question of should Mass Grip be in the class tree for all three specializations? You can make a pretty reasonable argument the answer maybe should be yes. I actually think Mass Grip is sweet. But
yeah. Like, they removed it. I mean, I think A-Bomb Limb probably going is fine. But the problem is Blood just has Mass Grip and a shorter cooldown on grip that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's a reason you brought double Blood DK instead of bringing Blood DK plus any other DK on, Brute Twister, because they just don't have Mass Grip. Right? Like, I think they need to go one step further and actually make Death Knight's grip how it used to be.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Like, make the cooldown on grip the same for both specs.
Yeah.
And add Mass Grip back to the DPS DKs.
I remember the WAD. I mean, Mass Grip got removed from DPS DK after, like, Manaroth, right?
I don't remember.
It was WAD.
But that sounds right.
It was. I'm pretty sure it was WAD because they just created, like, 3 fights that tier that required Mass Grips, because there was, like,
Manaroth.
It was Manaroth, it was Zul'Harrak, and then I'm pretty sure you used it on Archimon for the dogs, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, which is... also, Anti-Magic Zone got changed to no longer be a 20% DR. Now it is... but it was a 20% DR that had a damage cap. Now it is a flat 15% DR versus magic damage, but does not have a damage cap. So it's probably slightly...
And it has a 4-minute cooldown.
Yeah, okay, and a 4-minute cooldown. So it's probably slightly better in Raid, but a decent amount worse in Mythic Plus is how I would describe it. Because you would never actually hit that damage cap in Mythic Plus, and having it on a 2-minute CD is actually quite nice. Where in Raid, realistically, you don't necessarily need it more than once every 4 minutes. And the 15%, like, you would only get 20% DR for a couple of hits whenever you would utilize in Raid, but now you actually get to take part of the full value. So I think it just kind of depends on what style of content you're doing as to whether or not it's a buff or a nerf.
Yep. But in addition to that, Frost DK and Unholy DK talent changes. I don't know how it is. I don't play DK, but they got some stuff, which is cool.
I think the Blood Beast stuff, I've heard mostly positive stuff about that. So Blood Beast got changed now to proc off of Dark Transformation and Dancing Rune Weapon. So now it's more deterministic, and so people were pretty happy about that, because right now Blood Beast is like some slot machine nonsense.
Yep. Did you see the AUG change?
I have not, dude. I wanted to hit one more thing with DK.
Okay, go.
This isn't a raid buff, right?
I don't think that's a raid buff. I didn't actually look.
This was originally, like, a lot of people were originally saying this is a raid buff, but this is not. I don't think this is a raid buff.
Wait, DK is getting 2 raid buffs?
No, I don't think they're getting any raid buffs.
Well, they already have grip.
Shut the fuck up. Well, Evoker has 2 with Time Spiral and Blessing of the Broad, so I mean, why not give DK 2? And Paladin had two with Diva Aura and what was the other one? Retribution Aura.
Yeah, I don't think that's a raid buff. I think it's just 2% haste.
Okay, we have to give them a raid buff, especially for removing a bomb limb. This is not.
Yeah, check out Og real quick.
What do they do with Og?
Yeah, take a look.
Augmentation. New talent.
Oh yeah, there were some big Og changes.
That's good. That's good. That's a good change. This is exactly what I was hoping for, honestly.
No, but in other news, like Hunter's got some changes as well, which is great. Mages got some minor tuning as they always do. The Brewmaster.
I saw people whining about Brew, man. Like, what is going on?
I don't think they got as much of a rework as other or like updates as other specs. Like there's only like what 8 bullet points here, 9.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as much as people hoped. Meanwhile, you go down to Shadow's like 20th rework of the patch or of the entire game, of which they're doing things.
They got rid of Mind Spike. That was what I saw.
So my general vibe, and like again, don't play Shadow Freeze, is they're trying to focus Shadow and less on Psychic Link because I think they've identified as a problem, and more at upfront damage. Like there's a talent now that Shadow Crash does like 400% damage when it lands.
Oh.
And like there's something called Void Bolt Volley, which like AoE's Void Bolts, which is cool.
I think that
sounds cool.
I think Psychic Link is like a really poorly designed talent, especially if that's like all of your AoE. For the same reason I think that like Ignite is poorly designed, or any of these other specializations that do full AoE while doing full single target. I think that all of those are like pretty poorly designed, and if we could have fewer of those actually in the game as opposed to more of those, I think the game would be better off for it.
Yeah.
I saw they changed Killing Spree, where Killing Spree is now like, I don't even know. You just like shoot your gun over and over again.
It's better than what it was. So.
Yeah.
Then the last big thing is probably Protection Warrior getting talent changes
Spell
and
block.
the removal of Spell Block.
All right. I think that the Spell Block one, I'm gonna champion the cause here. Shout out Sense. I think that this is nonsense. So Spell Block getting removed. Basically, the reason that they say did. Let's see. Spell Block requires a lot of specialized knowledge to use. Not only did you need to know when damage was coming, but also whether it was a form of magic damage that could be blocked or not, and thus affected by the ability. AoE damage isn't blockable, neither is periodic damage. Some tank busters are and others aren't. We weren't happy with the knowledge demanded to use the ability effectively. Okay, first off, do we not feel the same about Holy Shield for Protection Paladin as to whether or not we're able to spell block this or not? Like, is what's the difference between spell block and Holy Shield? Okay, hold on. Why isn't Holy Shield getting removed? Secondly, this is already a damage profile type that Protection Warrior struggles with by a lot. And I wouldn't have hated if they just changed spell block, kept the name, and then just made it this flat DR that you could press every so often, and at least, say it's a 2-minute cooldown or a 1-minute cooldown, and it's a 75% DR for like 4 or 5 seconds. That would at least be reasonable, because then you know what it works versus. It works versus all magic damage. But instead, now they have this new talent that gives them
so bad.
Where is it? Oh, here it is. Spellbreaker.
Yeah.
You have a 4% chance to disrupt magic damage dealt to you, negating 100% of it. Which the last thing that you wanted is RNG magic damage mitigation as a warrior against the profile. Okay, the things that are most scary for warriors is consistent magic damage and dots, like heavy bleeds. Those are the two scariest things for warriors by far. And now it's like, all right, we got rid of spell block and we're giving you a 4% chance to be 100% immune, but you never really know if it's happening. Like,
it's so bad. Like,
take RNG is not like cool.
I mean, RNG is such a weird way to put it, because I think if you took lots of little hits, for example, if this was regarding melee hits, maybe I could see that. But the problem with spells, usually they're like really big hits, right? It's like a big spell tank buster, or like, it's not like you get hit by 30 different spell events, right? It's like you get hit by 2, like a bolt from a guy and then a magic tank buster and you die, right? So to have a 4% chance, I feel like is almost nothing to those, right? Like it's completely unreliable. while I, was reading the changes and I saw their mindset, it's like, okay, well, maybe they need something that's a little bit more broad or easier to use for warriors. And then they added that passive, and that's like, okay, well, that's not it. That is not what warrior needs to replace spell block.
I think, like I was saying, like a 60 or 75% DR versus pure magic damage that lasts for a few seconds and it's like a relatively long CD. It intuitively just makes sense, right? Like they don't need to be like fully immune versus abilities, and like, or alternatively, you could just put tooltips in the game similar to what they do with current block, right? And they're like, this is not able to be blocked, this is not able to be parried, right? They do that with abilities. It's not are block and parry really intuitive? I don't think so.
So I'm gonna say something that's probably a little hot. I don't think this is the real reason they got rid of spell block. Because this reason makes no sense.
Okay, what do you
Compared
think
to everything else
is?
in the game, this does not make sense. There is a lot of things that require fucking specialized knowledge in the game to use.
Any
there is
utility
a fuck
ability.
ton.
Any CC, like you can't fear mechs.
There's so much going on that I just don't believe that's the reason. And there's something else at play as to why spell block is removed, which could range from they think it's too powerful to the knowledge required is part of the reason, but there's a secondary there's a primary reason why they're removing it and they don't want to say it. I don't know what that might be, but I have a feeling this dev note is not telling the full story.
Do you think there's a mechanic from the next raid that spellblock broke?
I don't know. Like, I think what they've said here is functionally true. Spellblock requires a lot of extra knowledge to know. But like, so does a bunch of stuff. Like,
I mean, is Holy Shield not the exact same thing? Like,
no, it's not. I think it's a chance to work at everything. Like, why are we talking about Spellblock and not Fiery Brand? Like, Fiery Brand from Vengeance Demon Hunter is the exact same thing because you need to know whether the source of damage is from the fucking boss or from the environment.
Environmental damage is really troll.
Like if we're talking specifically about like excuse me, if we're talking specifically about knowledge and needing a database of where things are, Tarlo, the Beastmaster Hunter for Wowhead, creates a spreadsheet every tier of abilities that can be AoE, like that avoidance and other AoE DRs like Fate will work through, and the sources of damage, very similar to a spell block spreadsheet. Why are you targeting spell block but not fucking Fate, atrophic poison, Fiery Brand, all this bullshit fucking mechanics that require you to have a spreadsheet to figure out why are we targeting one and not the other?
Dude, there's so many times that somebody goes Zephyr here, and I'm like, does Zephyr even work on this? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, does Zephyr work on this?
Zephyr doesn't work on the Kaiveza line. I thought that was AoE. You know the Kaiveza Blaze? That's not considered AoE. You would think it is. Like, I do not understand that their reasoning here. Like, I do a little bit, but like, why are they singling this portion out?
It's crazy because we're like some of the sweatiest, most hardcore people who can do the research to figure out whether or not these things work versus these other things. But if you're just playing the game casually, how are you even supposed to know?
Dude, we were doing Galliwix in Erudite with the Vengeance Demon Hunter, and you know how the tank has to get the bombs, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, are the bombs environment sourced or Galliwix sourced? Do you know for Fiery Brand? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Why would I know this offhand? Like, but he's right because you need to know that. So like, ugh. Something else is at play with Spellblock, I bet you. Tinfoil's still on.
Yeah. I just don't think power-wise this is like an equitable change either for a specialization that was already struggling versus this type of damage. Like, we're deleting Spellblock, which is, some would say OP. I don't know if I would necessarily go that far, but it's certainly OP versus some things, and it gives them a very specialized niche versus very specific abilities, and then it's being replaced with 4%, I think the 4% chance to just completely dodge magic damage is disrespectful because like either you were gonna die and you had to press like a shield wall or something like that to actually mitigate it, or it's just like a bonus. It's like a win more type of thing. Like I'm pressing shield wall anyways. What's the name of this?
This is the spreadsheet for the entire race here.
What works versus what?
Like, this is
counts for
absurd.
Zephyr. Dude,
Like,
Feint is actually so troll. I remember when Feint used to work versus everything, and then Blizzard's like, yeah, Feint's too good. And then they just started making no abilities Feint work versus.
And then this is the spell block reflect one. Like, there's no difference between these spreadsheets. They're the same thing. That's stupid. I don't even play Prot Warrior and I'm upset by this change.
I mean, it's just... I think that, like, if they were actually going to remove it, just replace it with something that's equal power. That to me is like the craziest part. Like, why are we not replacing it with something that's equal power to spell block? Do we think that spell block was just too good? Warrior is too strong versus magic damage?
I mean, if they'd coded said that, I think you could argue that spell block was too powerful. I think that's a fair argument. It's basically near magic immunity for 30 seconds. I think you have a compelling case. If Blizzard was like, we think spell block is too powerful, we're nerfing it a little with something that isn't as powerful. And everybody would be like, okay.
Well, they're gonna say the same thing about AMS. It just feels like there's no parity here. I feel like that's probably the bigger thing at play here. Is it just doesn't feel very, very fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those kick them when you're down sort of changes, right? Like, for example, when they have what patch was it when everyone was mad in Group Finder, where they essentially buffed one of the best specs, where it was either one of the shaman specs.
05, they were protesting at LMG because
and they had, and to be fair, those specs weren't performing that well in raid, and that was kind of why they did it. Obviously, it was short-sighted because it was so good at M+, but it's one of those things where when you buff a spec when it's good or when you nerf a spec when it's bad, even if it isn't really that, big of a change, or they may have a reason for it or a future plan, it just feels really icky and you look at it and you're like, what the heck are they doing? And I feel like this is one of those changes where, Warrior isn't particularly super popular or powerful, and especially not against magic damage. So for them to be like, out of all the issues in the game right now, this is one of them that they're looking at. Like, clearly, I think I'm not going to go as tinfoil as Squishy to say that, like, oh, there's other secret reasons or whatever. But I do think that there has to be some sort of like further development to this plan other than what they posted in the blue post.
Yeah. Okay, so we also have had the ability to be able to check out the new dungeon only on M0. There is going to be Mythic Plus testing for the new dungeon on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, I believe.
This week-ish?
Yeah, they said Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific in a post, but like, it's up. You never really know.
Have you done it? Or am I the one who's done it?
I have not done it yet. What are your thoughts on it so far? I know it's a 3-boss dungeon.
So, I think it's a pretty good dungeon. I think it is going to be very difficult to pug. I think it is a pug-unfriendly dungeon and a very easy coordinated dungeon. So I'm not DPSing because we wanted to see shit because things died. But like, this boss is just kill the ads the boss. They like jump between players, so you want to like stack and like cleave them down. Tettles will love this. And then he drops shit in the ground, and you just gotta like get it out of melee.
How often does he summon them?
That was the first wave. He summons 2 waves of ads.
Just total
for it a bit. No, 2 waves. It's cyclical. It's a cyclical fight.
Okay, so it's going to be one of those fights that actually gets much harder the higher the key level goes. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. So he summons a bunch of ads. We kill it. And then he does a devour phase. It's the end of the phase. So if you step in the circle, you instantly die. If any of the ads get in the circle, he instantly kills them. And he gets a damage buff for 20% for every ad or player he kills, and heals 5%.
Somebody get this DK bomb limb. He needs it worse than ever.
But that's all the fight is. It's kill the ads the boss. We failed to kill like 5 ads there, and got eaten, and he healed like 25% and got like a 60% damage buff. It was rough, but pretty straightforward if people know to kill the ads. So
I mean, this is depending on what the meta comp is for this season. This fight could be easy to very hard. I think really serious. This feels kind of like IPA from Meadery, where you just have to have like a lot of mob control.
Yeah, you can see I just hop in to see what happens at the end here, and the boss heals 5%, which is annoying as hell.
You got 8, and he healed by 5%.
Yep. Every time an ad or the boss gets eaten, he heals 5%.
Well, why do you think? Okay, why do you think you don't think that this is pug unfriendly? Do you?
No. So the trash before this is a bunch of devourers, and do you remember when we've seen a lot of devourers?
Yeah, normally they don't do anything.
Good depths. Yeah, when they apply bursting stacks when they die.
Oh,
Um,
these guys.
Really?
Yeah, so we got 17 stacks because we bursted really hard and instantly fell over. So
Are these the exact same mobs, the one that like suck and then you have to kick them and stuff too?
no. These are just different. Like they jump around. I don't even know what they did half the time because I was using base UI. But
You have Plater installed? Come on, be serious.
yeah, I don't know. It was pretty like we were doing okay. Just every time they die, they just burst, which is like annoying as hell.
Is it? Oh, it's a dot, huh?
It's a dot. It's just like bursting, and it hurts. So like,
Is it dispellable?
nope.
Oh, they should change that so I can bring back. We can bring back the Shadow Priest meta.
But yeah, like that is a really cool line animation. Like it's actually like visuals on point. No issues with visuals.
I think the VFX. I'm just at a glance. I feel like I understand what all the mechanics do. Looking at what's going on. So yeah, I think visually this is. The dungeon is very pretty too, and it doesn't. I actually. I know this goes against what a dungeon is. I don't like the really cramped cave aspect of dungeons. I really like the ones that are more vibrant and honestly more open. But the ones that are more vibrant, I actually find to be far more appealing. So I love the color contrast of this dungeon.
Yeah,
like the look of it's nice. All right, what about the second boss here?
Second boss, pretty. This one I think is gonna be pretty easy for Pugs.
Okay.
Basically just puts down. The second boss of Amir just still had the little javelins. You just got to kill the javelins. It does increasing damage. And yeah, I tried deep breathing out. It just rebounds you. I tried.
That's actually. I think that's actually a decent mechanic.
I agree. Like it's fine. And then the other thing is the boss jumps off, and you have to get the lines through the boss to stop the AoE damage. Pretty straightforward.
All right.
And then both of them come out. You get a nice cleave phase for 15 seconds.
Nice. Actually,
so
this is kind of a sweet boss.
I really like this boss because it's simple and like you don't have like your damage amp burn phase, but you have a cleave burn phase, which is like very unique.
It is a damage amp. I mean, like if you really think about it, I mean, the boss isn't taking more damage, but everybody gets some bonus damage out of 2-target cleave as opposed to single target.
Yeah. The last area, the trash is kind of really is not great.
Oh, discovery waystone. Okay, how are the waystone discovery point stuff?
Was actually pretty good. You can see it on the left there.
I can see it right here.
Yeah, I just walked past it. Yeah, I highlighted.
Looks like a summoning stone.
Yeah, so this area sucks ass, and I'm pretty sure that you're gonna get count and like you're gonna try to skip as much as area in this area as possible.
Okay.
We fuck around for a bit because we're waiting. Basically,
like really scared of this area.
Yeah, so this guy does an AoE damage, like big AoE, and then summons this soul, and he heals every second it's alive. And then he casts the AoE again. Oh, by the way, he also bolts people, as you saw there. So he bolts people, he does AoE damage in like a channel, and then he heals.
Can you channel on this pillar while you're in combat?
No, it's only out of combat. It gives you a 10% haste buff, and your whole party has the channel for like 10 seconds. It's not worth it.
So I think Shadow Meld's gonna be required. We're gonna have our healer Meld click the pillar.
It's not great. But yeah, this place not great.
So do you have to click the pillars to summon the boss? Is that what's going on here?
Nope.
Oh, it's just the haste buff?
It's just the haste buff. It's not worth your time. You just want to skip as many of those AoEs as possible, I think.
It could be good. I mean, we'll figure that out later, right? That's kind of like a count to pathing scenario thing. It could be decent. Why do you think it's? I feel like nothing I've seen yet is counterintuitive to where Pugs were standing. Like whenever I did Operation Floodgate on the PTR or Priority of the Sacred Flame, I immediately knew that this was going to be hard for Pugs because why the dungeons were hard. Why do you think?
It's the last boss. To be clear, the last boss is the reason.
All right, let's go.
So you want to skip to
the last boss then.
So what the boss does is he summons clones like this. You can see my clone is marked up. This is the first pull on it. We have no idea what it's doing.
Okay, so
mine is up at the top there.
Yeah, this guy right here.
The boss casts daggers and then fires a dagger at your clone. And if it hits your clone, you take a massive die. You can see the entire party's fucking dying right now because we didn't know how it works. So you have to save your clone from the mechanics. And now it drops another clone, and you have to dodge your circle of your clone.
Am I crazy? Is this in slow-mo?
I think you would have slowed it down a little much.
I didn't slow it down. The playback speed's normal.
Weird.
I think you're crazy.
But so he does this again. We realize what we need to do. We need to grab our soul.
I don't know.
I don't It doesn't matter. Either way, you have to protect your clone. Then it does this intervention phase and summons 3 clones, and you have to prioritize the one that's in the shit first. If your clone gets... Yeah, if your clone gets hit by the thing, you take the massive dot and you are slowed, meaning you fail to pick up your next one too. And you can see there, Viet got hit, picked up the wrong clone first, got hit, died on M0.
This looks like so much movement.
This is a lot of movement. Yeah, that's
Yes.
exactly what I was thinking
moly.
too. It's kind of a question of should it actually be all 5 players participating with this mechanic? That's kind of...
But you do get a damage buff. If you pick up your clone, you get a stacking damage of 10% damage.
Well, yeah. I think that's less of the issue. It's more of like, okay, so like I actually don't think that this mechanic is the hard one. I think it's that pizza. I think it's that rotating pizza slice one. That to me feels... People are really bad at preemptive movement, preemptive defensive usage, preemptive damage allocation, and I do kind of I see where you're coming from, where you're saying that.
So it'll do it again here. So it summons 3 clones, and you have to pick up the one that's in the shit first.
I mean, being able to allocate which one you're supposed to go to first within...
You don't have long.
How long is this cast?
I think it ticks every 3 seconds or so. 5
Starts
seconds.
at 24, goes down to 18.
Okay.
So 6 seconds or something.
But yeah, that's basically the boss fight. I think this is going to ruin Pugs.
So basically you have 6 seconds to pick up the correct soul first.
Yeah, and then you have to pick up the other 2 before the next one detonates.
That is
a lot of movement.
I mean, this just feels like so much movement. Like, I'm thinking, so a fight that... what is it, Blaziken, the guy in Dark Flame? To me, that's a fight that like has a lot of movement, but you can kind of like space around it or whatever. But like that, to me, that's like a higher movement. And this is way more than that fight. Like, this is like you're running around everywhere.
Just to note, by the way, the boss itself had... by the way, this is just bubbles on crack. I don't know. We were told to try pulling this and to see what happened, and this is just bubbles on crack. Somebody else who had done the dungeon already.
The streets said it.
But the last boss, the one thing that is not noticeable because it's M0 Growl, is the boss has an aura that does periodic ticking damage.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, what do I really love in high movement fights as healers is infinite periodic ticking damage.
Periodic ticking damage on high movement fights. That's...
As long as it's like reasonable, like as long as it's not like Candle King, right? Like if it's like a little bit of damage and you just have to be making sure you're clicking your buttons, that's one thing. But as long as it's not tuned too highly, but I can sort of see what Squishy's saying of like, if you're in a group that's not that good and people are getting hit and then they just take way too much damage and you're having to like run everywhere as a healer and your healer's not that good, like yeah, that could be really tough.
I think it's just that fight though that's hard for Pugs. I feel like the rest of the stuff that I've seen is,
I mean, I think the first boss could be depending on ad clear because it spawns 2 sets of 3 ads on either side of the boss.
I mean, how do you feel about IPA, right? Like IPA.
That's true. Yeah,
I don't think that's any easier or harder than what IPA is. I don't think that IPA is like free for Pugs. I mean, I think it can be challenging for sure.
I think one of the issues with the ad fights that I foresee, and this is maybe even like a little tip too for people for these first 2 bosses, is the ability to like do the mechanics while standing as close as possible to your teammates, because it looks like it's going to be things are jumping on you over and over and over again, and you want to be staying close so that you can get that cleave. And a very big thing that I notice when I play in Pugs versus like a group of good players is that ability to just like as a ranged player, you just naturally want to stand far away so you can like see the field better and not have to worry about stuff, but you're trolling so hard if stuff is jumping on you and you're out of the pack. And so like that the whole spider, that first boss, my sort of view for it is like the obvious answer would be to stack up permanently, but then the mechanics are going to not let you do that, right? And so it's like making sure that you're always coming back into melee when the mechanics are done and like just keeping the ads together for cleave.
I think people will, right? Like if people will, they absolutely will. Like the darkness fight, people are obviously going to learn to stand at the candle. I think that's the type of ad fight where people will learn to stay in melee for whenever the ads are up. So I think that'll be okay. That last boss is brutal though. Like the punishment for failing to pick up your clone, just your healer is going to fucking have a nightmare day. I have a feeling.
True. I mean, this is the first iteration of it on M0 on the PTR. I think that Blizzard has been more aggressive in the past of fixing particular issues that players had with bosses and trash mobs. I I think that for the last 2 seasons, I know War Within Season 1 wasn't necessarily like regarded the greatest, but I think that was mostly because the dungeons were super hard, not because they didn't do their due diligence during the PTR cycles. I think that during the PTRs, particularly of last season and the War Within Season 1, I think that they actually did a lot of really good changes and tried to iterate on bosses based on feedback that players gave. And I don't expect that to change. And like if this launches on the PTR on Tuesday and everybody tries it, and the people who are playing the PTR are like, yeah, this is a little bit too hard even for us, and we're the people who try the PTR are the most sweaty and most hardcore players, and they're like, yeah, if this is too hard for us, this is probably gonna be too hard for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the mechanic is that hard, but I have a feeling that people are going to struggle with it because it does require kind of a little bit of a Twitch reaction.
I think that imagine you just gave people like 3 more seconds. It probably just makes that mechanic much easier, right?
Probably.
There's probably a way, but I think that at 6 seconds, I think the issue is being able to assess which clone you're supposed to soak first, and doing that in 6 seconds, while possible, it's going to be hard for most players. I think, especially
not a class without mobility.
Yeah, like imagine you're running on a priest, like you just
dude, Gork was on DK and he had to run out to the dagger clone every time, the one with the lines that are straight out, and he was waddling on some of them. It was rough.
I mean, they looked like they spawned pretty far from the boss too, which means that every single time you soak a clone, the best thing that you can do is just walk straight back towards the boss, and then...
Yeah. I mean, the best place to be is directly under the boss for all those, because...
Exactly, yeah.
Because it can spawn in any direction,
that's what I was saying, yeah. You want to play within... kind of like where you're playing. I think that where you're playing right here is fine. Oh, but then you have to move out.
Yeah, the circle one's interesting because you probably want to spawn your clone close, then spread out so you don't cleave other people too.
Yeah, I actually don't like. I don't mind the circle. I think the circle's fine.
The circle's fine.
But like here, you immediately want to get back. You want to get back to melee. You actually don't even want to be standing here. Interesting. Cool dungeon. I'm really excited to see how it feels to play.
Absolutely.
How was the pacing?
Pacing was pretty good. It seemed really quick. I actually need to look at the timer for this dungeon because I completely forgot to.
Oh yeah, is the timer in spell data?
Yeah.
Okay. I would
shout out to shorter dungeons, by the way. I've noticed that there's been this trend over the last couple expansions, and they've really kind of made it clear that this was not an accident. This is what they're trying to do. And man, do I love not having any 40-minute dungeons. Like, do you remember those? Like, not because some dungeons like Shrine of the Storm or like the other side, for example, I didn't even really mind them that much, right? But it was just such a slog to do those keys sometimes when they're so long. And it feels like nowadays 35 minutes is like a long dungeon, and a lot of dungeons are sub 30.
I mean, I think that for a while, a lot of feedback that players were giving was that 40-minute, 45-minute dungeons were just too long, and the average player wants to kind of similar to like a game in any other video game, just like spend 30 minutes on the game and then figure out, like, because it just, whatever you end up spending 45 minutes or whatever in a dungeon is just a little bit too long. I did have this conversation with people at BlizzCon talking about exactly what you're kind of talking about, and they were like, yeah, we would love to move dungeons closer to 30-minute average. Obviously not every dungeon can be flat 30 minutes just because of what they are, but they were like, yeah, the closer that we can get them to 30 minutes, the better that we actually think that that's going to be.
Right. Well, we all know too that doing the dungeon is not the entire play experience, right? When it comes to, being an LFG and then making sure your talents and stuff are right and setting up your build and waiting for people, like a 45-minute dungeon quickly turns into an hour and 15 minutes.
It was also stated that they were scared about putting dungeons below 30 minutes because of what Maw of Souls was in the past. But I mean, we saw Rookery at 29 minutes this season, and Rookery wasn't.
Yeah.
Rookery,
I don't know.
I mean, Rookery's only 29, I guess, is maybe the difference here, right?
Yeah, I don't really buy that, but I get what they're saying, I guess.
It's 31 minutes, by the way.
It's 31? Yeah, that's not bad.
31. Okay, some stuff that I'm going to post about, but I want to ask your opinion on, because I think it's a really interesting topic. So there are 2 dungeons that were added that got new Mythic Plus timers and count checks that are not in the dungeon rotation for the season. And I don't know why.
Interesting.
They are Blood Mole Slag Mines from WoD.
Okay.
Which had their stuff updated. It got the timer reduced to 30 minutes. It was 60 minutes for some reason.
Is that just the default timer?
No idea. And Stonecore got added.
What's Stone
It has a
Core?
timer up. Cataclysm. And got a timer added of 30 minutes. They both also have count checks now.
That
Is that like
That's
what's your
prepping?
thoughts on that?
I mean, it just reads like that's prepping for Midnight Season 1, but did they normally do it this early?
No, absolutely not. This
Yeah.
is very new.
Yeah, I was gonna say that feels atypical. I would be shocked if they added 2 additional dungeons in like the 0.5 patch. Wouldn't you?
I honestly have no idea. My first thought was maybe it was a Tazavesh replacement before they brought on Tazavesh.
Okay.
But I have a feeling that Tazavesh was a shoe-in for the dungeon rotation, considering the hub is Tazavesh.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know about Tazavish.
Growl?
Um,
I mean, do you know anything about Ecodome, Squishy?
and that was in 11.2.
Yeah, in this patch. Ecodome was
In
added
this-
this patch too, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. When it comes to M plus seasons, I feel like they've become pretty formulaic, and I would be surprised if they were to add stuff mid patch like that. Especially, would seem really random, right? If those were the 2 dungeons. So I guess I would have to go with Tettles and say that this is just sort of prep for later. Or who this is a little bit tinfoil hat, but we talked about how the Fated season seemed to lose its luster a little bit, and who maybe they're planning something different for the end of this expansion, where like, you know, maybe they have a little short, you know, like mini season or something at the I don't know, just, you know, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it's possible that like they're cooking up the idea that maybe they, you know, give you a random little dungeon pool for like pre-patch and a month before the patch or something like that.
Could be. Well, maybe it's a Mythic Plus season 4 only?
Anecdotally, I thought Bloodmaw Slag Mines, whenever I played it in WoD, was garbage. So, but it has also been like 10 years. So,
But yeah, that was just kind of like a really interesting thing, and I'm not really sure what to think about it. So
yeah, I don't know. I feel like
Could just be nothing too. It could be those were ideas that they had and they were messing with, like they just said like some random guy was working on it because it was an idea and then they decided not, but it was in the build. And, you know,
I feel like it's like 80% chance that it's nothing, just gut reaction. But I think there's 20% chance that it's probably not a 0.5. I would probably say next expansion seems more likely than a random 2 dungeons being added in a 0.5.
now, I just looked at the exact count. So the Stone Core requires exactly 1337 count.
Elite amount of count for sure. They
wow,
might,
that's
they might just be fucking with you,
actually,
man.
yeah,
I don't know.
interesting. Interesting.
I feel like they might be messing with exactly you.
That's entertaining.
And the Bloodmaw Slag Mines timer is 69 minutes and 69 seconds.
69 minutes, 420 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, Tettles, time to pop off. Let's go.
All right. Time to talk about 11.17 stuff. All right. So with 11.1.7, we had some stuff that got added, including, but not limited to, the mole belt and the 1-button rotation and the rotation assist. I made a video this week. I actually made multiple videos this week talking about the 1-button rotation and the rotation assist. What are your guys' just gut thoughts about like the 1-button rotation and the rotation assist, having seen it play out for, you know, the first week or so? We kind of talked about it whenever it was originally getting launched, and we had a little bit of pushback on the concept of, you know, maybe a little bit of preemptive concern that it could be too good, and how that would end up interacting with larger amounts of players' gameplay. I mean, what are your guys' just kind of gut reactions with having seen it, how it's played out so far?
So I would say it was around what I expected it to be. My biggest problem with it is the discrepancy of how different it is in between specs.
Sure.
You know, like one of the big things is basically the way that it works is there's a penalty between how often you can press spells that's greater than the normal GCD penalty. And so and I talked about this a little bit last week, but depending on how important your filler buttons are and how many like important damage windows your class has, the one button rotation could be more or less extremely functionable, or it could be completely dog water. And it's kind of annoying, right? Like, it's like, well, it's like it only, imagine if they release one button rotation, but it only worked for 10 out of the 30 DPS or whatever specs. That's kind of how it feels like it is. Where it's like, if you play Mage, for example, like, you basically don't even use it. Maybe you use it with Frost. But it just feels weird. Like, it feels very incomplete in that way, because there's no way they had to do it like that, right?
Dude, why does it not work for tanks or healers either? Because like it only ends up working for DPS specializations, and that to me is like it pushes more and more players to play DPS as opposed to playing tank or healer. Is that really what we need in the game?
That's definitely
I was gonna bring up healers, because the DPS one is just, or sorry, the one button rotation for healers is just bait. It's just flat out bait. Like, it does a DPS rotation, which is not what you want at all. Like, I don't even know why healers have one. I think it's actively harmful and misleading for healers.
I agree. Yeah, I think for healers they should have done something where it's like target lowest health player, press healing ability on it, right? Target lowest health player, press healing ability on them, that kind of thing. Where it's not good, but it's something, right? Like, it's not meant to be good. I mean, even if you go back and look at the Ian interview that he had with Max and Dratnos, basically he was stating it's for accessibility purposes. It's not for players who want to master their spec. If they want to experience Azeroth and experience the story and mechanics, they felt like they get in the way of that. This is for those players. Those people play tank and healer too, or yeah, those people play tank and healer too. It's not like those people are only DPS. Like, what?
Yeah.
I think another thing about it is that probably for the better is I think the community right now is seeing it for how they're treating it as how it was intended, basically assuming that it's very, very, very bad and that it's not worth using or even like thinking about. Unless you're somebody who, like, needs it, or, very, very basic, which I think is healthy. Like, in general, that's where I want it to be tuned wise, right? If it's there, if, either you don't have the physical ability to press a lot of buttons, or you're just, laying in your bed doing transmog farming and you just want to press one button. Like, for those sorts of people, they're doing it.
It's great if you're playing on, like, what's the console, the Steam Deck?
A controller?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're playing like a Steam Deck or something like that.
But I think that over time, it's going to get better, and people are going to get better at it. One thing that we were talking about, for example, is as Warlock, when you go into a pack, the first button that it wants to press is Cataclysm, which basically like does damage and dots all the mobs in the pack. But you really want the pack to be gathered before you press that, right? But if you just dot all the mobs manually as the pull is setting up, then you start mashing the one button rotation, you're going to be doing way, way, way more damage. And so I think there's going to be, as people mess with it more, and as like people are going to start to come up with strategies and ways to use it, where it's like, pseudo one button rotation of like, okay, well, how to press your cooldown, and like the weaknesses that it has, and you kind of use it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, I voiced this previously and it wasn't really super well received, and now people are kind of realizing a little bit more that the better it gets, the more problematic it is. If you're ever feeling incentivized to use it when you don't want to, like, it's one thing if, like, basically the whole argument is like, well, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. And it's like, when you're playing a single player game, like, all right, so the analogy that I use is like, think about Portal, right? It's an old school puzzle game. I mean, everybody knows Portal, even though I'm a boomer. Imagine if when you play Portal, you walk into the room, and then right at the beginning of the room, there's a button, and then if you press the button, it just starts solving the puzzle for you. And it's like, well, if you're playing Portal by yourself, you're probably never going to press that button, right? Like, what's the point? We all agree that button defeats the purpose and no one will really press it, right? But Portal's a single player game. Now imagine if you're playing a game where you're, me and Squishy and Tettles are playing Portal simultaneously, but we can't all advance until all of us have solved the puzzle. And so Tettles and Squishy are done, and now this dumb cat with a waffle on his head can't figure out the puzzle, and like, I'm holding them back now because I'm not good at the game I'm playing. I'm holding them back, and I'm feeling like oh, I really want to press this button because I'm griefing my friends. And it's like, really, I'm being robbed of the experience, right? The eventual, aha, I figured out the puzzle, I did this. I'm essentially being robbed of the experience so that Tettles and Squishy can have a better time. And so I think that the worry that I have about the one button rotation is that people will feel obliged to use it when they don't want to. I think for people that need it and for people that just don't care and just want to use it, I think that's fine. The worry that I have is people who are, like if you look at it, the one button rotation has a penalty, right? It's literal proof that the way that they sort of want you to play the game is to get good at your spec, and you're rewarded by doing better damage, right? If you're a better player than the one button rotation, you get more damage. That's your reward, and that's the incentive to do it, right? But let's say you're a noob, right? Then the incentive structure is reversed. You're actually incentivized by doing more damage to use the one button rotation if you're a noob, right? And so it creates this perverse incentive structure where if you're new to the game, you're not actually incentivized to put in all this hard work and practice. You're incentivized to just put on the one button and mash it over and over again, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that was sort of like my initial thoughts on it. I'm happy that the community is sort of just treating it as it's supposed to, And so, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of been a nothing burger and it's just kind of there, but I think it'll creep up and it'll start to make more appearances as time goes on.
I think next season, whenever it's kind of like pings. You guys remember whenever pings were released and people were like, why would you ever use pings? Like pings are kind of worthless. And then the first time that you actually start a brand new season and you have pings, you're like, wait, these are sweet. We can actually,
pings are insane. I was playing Guild Wars, this like old school game, but it handles similarly to WoW. And dude, the amount of times I'm just trying to ping the ground in a game that never had pings ever, and I'm just trying to ping to like show people like, yo, there's a guy here, he's pushing, and it's just like, dude, every game needs this, man. Dude, pings are so good. I love pings.
Yep. I had a conversation with Ellipses Squishy the other day, and one thing I initially wrote in like basically in part of the Wowhead guide, we had like this template. It was like write about how good the single button assistant and the rotation highlight is for balance. I was like, the one button assistant is fine. We'll probably out DPS some heroic level raiders, but it starts to get noticeably worse in Mythic Plus / AoE scenarios. This was what I initially wrote about it, and then Ellipses DM'd me asking me if I was going to update this and like what my thoughts are like were on this line. Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's probably true. I mean, so I think that's my biggest thing with like the one button rotation is first of all, how different it is between specs, right?
Yes,
like, some of them are like 10% DPS loss, and some of them are like 25% plus DPS loss. And I think I said this before. That's because they chose a GCD penalty as the negative. And I think part of the reason why I was against it was because it just doesn't treat it fairly. Dot ticks don't go slower because you have a GCD penalty. Specs with pets are going to keep attacking at the same rate.
Chaos Bolt is in a 1 GCD. Chaos Bolt's like a 1.7 second long cast. That's not effective the same way, right?
I think they were right in applying a penalty. I just think the penalty chosen doesn't do what they said it does.
Yeah.
It isn't actually penalizing, or it's unfairly penalizing some specs and not others. And I think just like, what is it, like a 30% GCD increase?
25%, yeah.
25%? So like, I think they should have probably just slapped a 25% damage nerf on it instead.
Yeah. So remember, this was a flash in the pan, but essentially, Tettles tweeted about this and it was fixed within a couple hours. They added or someone developed a weak aura that, and I don't even know if this has anything to do with the one button assistant or not.
It came out before. Yeah. It came out like 2 or 3 weeks before.
This was actually before the one button assistant, but basically it was a weak aura that it would use the API from Hakili, which is the rotation assistant add-on that was used previously, sort of what Blizzard is trying to emulate. And it was a weak aura that would create a macro that would pull the information from Hakili to know which button to press. And it had this was just basically a cheat. Like, it would have no GCD penalty, no anything, and it would use it in game, right? Honestly, it sounds stupid, but this feels so much better than the one button rotation. And I feel like just having this and then having like a huge damage penalty on it would have been so much better, no? Like, imagine if the one button rotation was this, and you just had like a fat, like 50% damage penalty. Because then you could actually play almost every spec, and it would feel like you're playing your spec, right? Like you would be doing beans damage, but like you could see what you would make all the same decisions that your spec was making of like what to use cooldowns on and all that.
Needing to have the knowledge on when to press CDs and stuff like that is like really. I think it's easy. Obviously, I think it's much easier to teach people how to use their cooldowns than it is to teach them how to do their rotation. But at the same time, I think that for people who are trying to use the one button rotation, they don't really want to think about their cooldowns.
Yeah. I think... Okay, so the funny thing is, I don't think this weakcore would have ever been made if Blizzard didn't condone a one button rotation. Because Blizzard condoned a one button rotation, this was made.
Right, because it's so obviously a cheat, right? But then if Blizzard put in a one button rotation, it's like, well,
you're like, okay, well, we're just gonna it's technically not against the TOS. The calls were there, you're doing everything via the API, but Blizzard can disable that API at any point, and they did.
It wasn't using the one button rotation at all. What it was actually doing was it was creating a macro button, like on screen, and it read the data from Hikili and changed the macro button to the next ability over and over and over again.
Right,
in combat,
and they disabled the API to change macros in that specific to pull that data in combat.
Yeah,
which is why once you're in combat, it doesn't work anymore. But because Blizzard condoned this, like you said, it was just available before it came out.
596 bookmarks.
That's actually crazy. That's crazy.
This is the I'll hit this later when I'm home. But Blizzard kind of opened a can of worms with this, I think. I think it's probably good for the game for them to add it because it's already existed. But I do think that it is tough for them to go anywhere now that it's been like this. For some reason, they didn't launch this conservatively.
Correct.
They launched it on the very high end side. And now they might look to pull it back a little, but we'll see what they do.
So, okay, I guess just present it like this. Will this contribute to the success of players, yes or no? I think the answer is yes, right?
I think for sure, yeah, for sure it will. I think people aren't quite realizing it yet, but over time people will more and more, it'll be a bigger and bigger deal.
So we kind of all agree that it will contribute to the success of players. I guess the next question is then, will it create or remove fun experiences and moments for players? Do we think that it creates or removes fun moments? Because for me, and I guess the general premise of my arguments as to why I think this is currently too good is, as it currently stands, I think it removes more fun moments than creates them, just because of what it actually is, right? Because it was designed to be. I mean, Ian, even in that interview with Max and Dratnos, he said it's supposed to be this. It's not a tool that's taken by the raid leader and you're telling DPS to stop DPSing manually and turn on the one button mode. But will this actually create that kind of situation?
I don't know. It might happen from how focused people are, but from the other side, and we've commented on how hard it is to get into the game.
Yes.
And how much it turns people off. Is skill in your rotation actually a good skill? That is the question that you are basically posing here, and you're assuming the answer is yes. But I bet you there are people out there who say, I don't want to learn the rotation. I just want to play with my friends and do the raid encounters and focus on the raid mechanics where I get to coordinate with the team rather than the individual mechanic of having to do a rotation correctly.
I think that's valid. At the same time, how do I describe this? I think that the way to address that isn't to completely condense a rotation down into one singular button, right? If the game truly is too complicated, the fix isn't giving people this infinite money hack, right? Or the portal puzzle skip, like Growl mentioned earlier. I don't think the solution is to actually do that, but instead I actually think the solution would then be to just create less complicated specializations, right?
Well, so the two main arguments that I have against that idea, I know that's not necessarily Squishy's argument, but people do feel like that. Mm-hmm. Number one is if you look at the overwhelming majority of the way people play the game, doing damage and being good at doing damage is the most fun thing for a DPS, and that's all they concentrate on, right? Like, how often do you run into a player who is like super, super good mechanically and does all the kicks and all the strats, but then doesn't do good damage, compared to somebody who just does damage and then probably could use a little work on their mechanics, right? Like, that's basically everybody that plays the game. They spend a majority of time trying to do the most amount of damage that they can versus doing the mechanics. Like, when you let people choose what they learn and what they get good at, they all want to do good damage and they all want to like be good at their rotation. That's what people are doing. While there are some people, I'm sure, that want to be part of that, right? And like, oh, I want to be part of the guild, and but I'm whatever, blah blah blah. I mean, there's tons of different things for that, right? You could play healer, you could play an easy DPS, you could just be not very good at damage but be good at mechanics, and the guild invites you anyway. So that's my main issue with that idea, is like people just want to do good damage, and ultimately the one button rotation is simply just going to be a way for some people to take an easy shortcut to do more damage. Secondly, there are already tools in place for the game for people to experience things. Like, okay, for example, there's got to be tons of people who just play the game very casually and either want to hang out with people socially or enjoy the lore and want to see all the boss encounters and stuff like that. And those tools are already in the game, right? Those people don't need to be raiding mythic bosses or like getting AOTC if they're not competitively minded, right? If these are people that just want to hang out, and like, I remember there was that Max video where he was in that guild and they were like on camera, like shotgunning beers and doing whatever, right?
That guild is based.
Yeah. Right, those guys are awesome, right? I have no problem with those people, but like, those people don't need a button to do a bunch of damage, right? Like, you can just, there are difficulty modes and group formats and classes that you can play so that you can do that, right? Those guys already exist. That the barrier to, making an argument that, oh, we need to put in a one button rotation so that guild can do the first boss, like the early bosses of Mythic, just doesn't really make sense to me, right? Like, it's not, the content is already there and those people are already there enjoying it and having fun. Like, if you're somebody who doesn't care about your rotation and like being competitive and you just want to either play socially or whatever, like, that stuff's there, right? You can do LFR, you can do normal, like, you can do low keys or go into Group Finder or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, there are tons of people that enjoy the game like that already. Arguing that those people need to do more damage all of a sudden now is like a little bit silly, right? Like, why if they don't care about doing the damage, why do they need the one button to do more damage?
For me, it's just tough because the first, I mean, like, I write the Wowhead guide for Moonkin. If the first thing that, like, you want to become a little bit more competitive, you want to do a little bit more damage, you start reading a guide, and the first thing that's presented to you is to turn on the one button rotation, that's probably better than actually trying to read and digest the guide in its, full, just trying to digest the guide. I mean, the fact that there is that kind of skip to be able to do 90% of your potential DPS, assuming that you're able to optimize your movement and stuff and your cooldowns, that to me, I think, is a little bit problematic.
The interesting question is, why did they choose to raise the ceiling versus lower? Excuse me, lower the. Let me try again. Why do they choose to raise the floor rather than lower the ceiling? I have I've had the personal take that the ceiling is way too high right now, and it continues to be way too high, and therefore they need to tune the ceiling too high on a lot of their raid fights.
I think we all agree with that. Yeah, like, I actually
why aren't we bringing, like, not straight up removing throughput checks, but like, for example, Gallywix. You did not need to have an optimized rotation for Gallywix in the slightest. And it still was a really enjoyable fight.
That was a fun boss.
WoW was just not a game that you need to play GCD perfect either. It never really has been. But you're rewarded heavily if you are even close. Like, for me, I bet I play. No, I've never hit sim DPS. I bet I play within 5, maybe 10% of like what my character's potential is. And I'm somebody who spends a stupid amount of time playing this game, right? Like, I've spent 700 days on my druid or something.
It's definitely like a very interesting question, and like, my personal thoughts on it is, it exists. Blizzard's gonna do whatever. Like, I'm not gonna use it. I don't care. I will not force anyone to use it in my raids. I understand like the discussion going on, but I just like presenting kind of the alternate viewpoints of like, maybe this is what they're doing, because they haven't really talked about it too much other than that initial interview.
So, but here's the thing. I mean, in your guild, if somebody was going to get out DPS by the 1-button rotation, they would not be in your guild. So I don't know if that's necessarily very fair.
Totally fair, but it's just kind of like an interesting. Like I always think from the game dev point of view, what was the exact goal for doing this? And I have to think it was ease of entry.
Yeah, I do think it's ease of entry. I do think it's tough, though, whenever the ease of entry option removes a large portion of gameplay for people. Like, I do understand that some people are going to disagree that the rotation's not gameplay, but I think that, at least from my perspective, I think that being able to do your rotation and how you interact with your character is the majority of how I actually interact with the game. It actually has I would say very little, but it actually has a lot less to do with the encounters or the dungeons, but it has a lot to do with me actively playing my character and how I manage my character in a 3D space. And a lot of the gameplay of that just got removed.
Yeah, that was sort of what I was saying about difficulties too, right? Of World of Warcraft at its core is juggling doing your job, what you need to do for your team, whether it's doing damage or healing or taking the mobs, and doing whatever mechanics are presented to you. And as you move up in difficulty, the complexity of that increases all over the board, right? You need the bosses in Mythic have more HP than the bosses in normal and more mechanics. And so to say, oh, I want to do the complexity of the things in Mythic or Heroic, but I don't want to do the complexity of my rotation, you're just fundamentally changing the game a lot, right? And maybe maybe there's some world where that's the case. I just think that calling it ease of entry is a little bit disingenuous because I think it gets people into a trap because it doesn't really teach you what you know, like once you let's say you're somebody who's brand new to the game, right?
Yeah.
But you never learn anything about rotation. All you do is just press the one button, right? Eventually you're going to get the point where you're going to have to rip the band-aid off, and arguably you still have the same barrier to entry that you always did, right? Maybe you have a little bit more knowledge or whatever, but ultimately like you would have picked that up anyway more naturally. And so I think that because the one button doesn't teach you anything other than literally just mashing it over and over again is sort of the problem that I have with it. That's the biggest issue that I have with calling it helping people get in. Again, if you're somebody who can't right physically, then it's an accessibility thing or a barrier to entry. But for a majority of people that play World of Warcraft, that's simply just pressing skip, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to learn this part of the game. I'm just going to press skip and go to something else. And I just think it takes away a core part of the game that a majority of people think is the most fun part of the game that they interact with, right? DPS, most popular role by far, and everybody that plays it is a freaking monkey who doesn't care about mechanics and only wants to do damage. So to say that, oh, let's take this part away, it's like, you know, maybe we shouldn't do that.
I do think, I mean, let's talk about it from an accessibility perspective. I think it actually can be good for some people who need it for accessibility purposes, particularly those who, paraplegics, lacking hands, lacking wrists, lacking digits, those kind of things. I actually think it can be good for them. The problem is that, accessibility is supposed to, break down barriers, not remove gameplay. And I think that with the current iteration of the one button rotation, it's just so good that it ends up creating this situation where you're better off actually turning it on, even if you were somebody who doesn't need it for accessibility purposes, right? While I actually don't think it would necessarily be a bad accessibility feature, I don't think they should delete it. But I do think that if they had a more harsh damage penalty, let's say a 50% damage down, that would kind of solve the problem of people who aren't intended to be using it. Like, it's supposed to be intended for people who are trying to play the game casually. I mean, Ian stated these things in an interview with Max Dreadness. It's supposed to be for players who want to play the game casually and experience the content, not for people who want to be competitive. And right now, if you want to be competitive up until a certain point, like, you could be an AOTC raider, you could get all of your 12s. Like, that's not low-level content for most people. That you could easily do that with a one-button rotation. Like, I timed to 17 with it, which people keep using this argument that I'm a good player. That's why I timed the 17 with it. Like, of course, you have to be a good player to be able to time the 17 first and foremost. But the proof of concept is there that you can time a 17 Mythic Plus dungeon, which is close to title range with the one button rotation. And I was top DPS while doing it, which is, I I can't imagine if I got beat by it. And like, how would that make you feel if you got beat by it? Like, you've spent so much time trying to learn the game, you just get smoked by some guy using the one button rotation. Is that not going to make you just feel terrible?
I mean, that's why it doesn't show anything. Like, I think there's very valid arguments. I don't know. Like, that is just an ego check. Like, if that is the reason that you're going to remove one button rotation, the sorry answer is get good, and I'm going to stick to that. But
I've met 0 World of Warcraft players who believe that they're bad at World of Warcraft.
I agree with you, but that is the functionality of it. Like, there are very valid reasons that I think that are concerning about it. I don't know whether Blizzard's going to do anything. Maybe they're just going to forget it here. Do you remember that Blizzard also has default talent trees?
Yeah,
talent trees that no one uses because they're that bad. This rotation could not get upgraded in the next expansion, and all this could just be forgotten about.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it could be terrible. I also will say, from an accessibility perspective, it really hurt my hands to use. I don't have like carpal tunnel, like I don't really have wrist issues. Utilizing the one button rotation hurt my hands. Like, my hands were genuinely on fire. And then the solution would be like, yeah, macro this to 2 buttons. It's like, is that not ironic that it's a one button rotation that I need to macro to multiple buttons?
I did it for like 3 minutes and my finger hurt. So like, yeah,
I did an entire dungeon. I'm just like, dude,
I don't know how you did that for that long.
Well, then I downloaded auto hotkey.
Yeah, so in summation, I think we're unfortunately gonna have to wait and see. Hopefully it doesn't. It seems like it's gonna have less of a negative impact as I may have foreseen, just because people are mostly just kind of treating it as it should be, of like, hey, I don't really want to use this, I just want to play.
I've seen some guild leaders already tell some of their DPS that there are sandbagging to actually swap to it and turn it on.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem, I guess, is while I am out in the streets, that's a realm that I'm not really, like doing low keys or do, AOTC raid sort of thing. And I think that don't be disillusioned at the short-term success of it. Like, basically, Tettles asked the question of, does this create good experiences or take them away? And I think in the short term, it definitely will, right? If you're somebody who is part of your raid and you're one of the bottom performers and you don't feel good about it, if you show up to raid and now you're using one button and now you're not doing great, but you're middle of the pack or whatever, that's going to feel good, right? And when your guild gets AOTC and you're doing the stuff, that's going to feel good in the short term, right? Like, as you're accomplishing this. But you just ask the question of like, is somebody who shows up to the game and just presses one button going to be like coming back patch after patch and excited to come back and just go to the raid and hold one button, right? Like, I think that I don't know. I want people to think about that Portal analogy again, of to say that the one button rotation is good for people. It's like, in that situation, who is the Portal button good for? Is that good for me, or is it good for Squishy and Tettles? Because it almost feels like it's a little bit selfish in that regard of, it's not good for the person using it. You're basically you're giving them a shortcut and taking away their experience. It's better for the people that you're playing with.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like the people who like the one button are the people that, oh, now I can give this to somebody I'm playing with and their damage won't be so shit. I mean, those are the people that are happy about the one button. But like, is the person who has to show up to raid now and press the one button, like, yeah, they might be like, oh yeah, I'm having a good time with you, blah, blah, blah. But like, number one, are they really having a good time? And if they genuinely don't care at all about like getting better, being competitive, like, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't really be dragging them into like whatever content you're dragging them into, right? Like, you can't find something that's fun where they don't feel like they're holding you back. Like, why don't you guys just chill and, I don't know. Maybe I might not fully understand the dynamic here, but like, I guess I kind of picture like, imagine I'm playing a video game with my mom or my dad who's not, like, do I really need to drag them into some crazy, like, hard game that I play and then give them a cheat code so that they can play with me? Or can I just play some other game that they'll have fun too, right? Like, I wouldn't play...
You can play at their level as well.
Yeah, or just make some brand new character and like, oh, I have, let's say you have these, whatever friends that you're playing with in a normal guild. Well, make some new guy and, play with no item level or play some, silly build or whatever. Like, why do you have to, be in content where you have to take away their ability to use their rotation because they're so bad at it? Like, I don't know. And again, I am not in a situation really where I do this in World of Warcraft, so I could be very off base here. And I know the people in the comments are already typing that, but I just sort of envision that like idea of, you know, of like you're playing with a friend who's new and it's like, well, you know, try and think about how you can make them have a good time rather than how do I have a better time with them sucking.
Yeah.
So-
yeah.
I think like one of the things that would be good to ask Blizzard if anybody has an interview is just basically like, how much do you consider doing the rotation as part of a, you know, a high level thing? And do you think rotations are too complex? I think those two questions will answer a lot of the speculation, because I think the part of the issue right now is we don't actually know what we're giving feedback on or what the one button rotation is exactly supposed to solve.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Right? Like, is it supposed to be for the people that are struggling? Is it supposed to be for the newcomers? Is it supposed to be ease of access? Is it only supposed to be for accessibility? Like, depending on what Blizzard actually intends for it, the feedback will change. Right? Like we've discussed this at length here, and each one of the feedbacks is probably actually targeting a very separate possible issue.
For
You know,
me,
if it's,
I think the game is too complicated. Yeah, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say, if it's supposed to be for ease of access, then it probably does too much damage, right? Like if the issue, or if the one button rotation is supposed to be for I can't even think any just other things. I'm just gonna stop that topic.
No,
there.
no,
But yeah,
it's- no,
you get the point.
You're
No,
right.
that's actually a really, really good point. I think that's what caused a lot of this discourse or like disagreements and comments and Twitter discussions is people are sort of considering it for different things, right? Like a lot of my sort of comments when I talk about it, dude, I mean, as you guys tell me in the comments every day, I sit on my computer and I play World of Warcraft many, many hours a week, more than everybody. Like, this doesn't affect my life at all whatsoever. I'm thinking about it from the new player on-ramp point of view of, hey, if I just started playing World of Warcraft, why would I, you know, learn to play when I can just press this one button? But if you're thinking of it as, hey, you know, I have a friend who's either handicapped or maybe they just don't really want to keep up with the game anymore, but still want to show up on Friday nights and have a couple beers and raid with the old team, you know, that's how you're thinking of it, you know. Well, we're arguing two different things. Like, I don't even want to, I want to help those people that you want to help too. I see no problem there. Like, if you're somebody who's played the game for 20 years since Classic and you CBA doing fucking anything anymore, but you still want to talk to your buds that you used to raid with, like, yeah, sure, you know, press one button. I don't care. I have no problem with that. Like, that's a legitimate way to enjoy the game.
I think a lot of it too is how competitive are you supposed to be allowed to be while removing that gameplay element of your rotation. And I think that everybody has their own, you know, limit as to how competitive you're allowed to be able to be, where some people think that you should, you know, the optimal way of playing the game should actually only be one button, where some people believe that it should be only for accessibility purposes.
Is that not just gatekeeping? Like, just straight up just gatekeeping?
I don't think so, because
It's like, if I was playing Dark Souls, and I've heard this argument, I don't play Dark Souls, I've heard this, it's like, you have to kill this Dark Souls boss in this specific way, and not using any one of the many cheeses that are out there. Is that not a thing? Like,
well,
your kill is not valid if you cheese this boss.
So, well, gatekeeping is interesting because I actually feel very, very strongly about that Dark Souls thing. And the way I see it is there's a way to play it that's very fun, and a way to get the most out of it, right? It's same as sort of the Portal thing again of like, you know, are you gatekeeping by saying don't use the button? It's like, dude, Portal is one of the greatest games of all time, and if you literally watch the game solve itself in front of you, you're completely losing the ability. Like, I would love to play Portal again for the first time, and I would love to do all this stuff for the first time, and it's like, I guess I was sort of thinking, like, I remember when Peekaboo played Elden Ring, and I was thinking like, everyone who's played Elden Ring knows about that sort of gatekeeping, right? Of like, oh, don't use this build and don't use magic and don't use summons and blah blah blah, right? But the truth of the matter is, like, I don't know, there, in my opinion, like, playing like that is like a really fun experience, especially for someone like Peekaboo who's like a really good gamer and can handle those challenges. And I don't want him to, like, okay, so one thing, Dorky actually played Elden Ring and he walked into the first hard boss and he basically cheated unknowingly, and not like, he didn't know how OP it was, and he literally like used some random thing and like killed one of the hardest bosses in like one of the very first tries, and he literally restarted the game. He was like, what the heck, like what even was that? Like, he was told like, yo, don't do this, and then he sort of, you know. But anyway, like, I guess my point is that, like, it's gatekeeping, yeah, like, I don't know, gatekeeping is such a loose word, and I think it's more so like, you know, thinking about the intended experience. And as much as that may be gatekeeping, I mean, that's sort of what game design is, right? Like you're creating an experience for somebody to go through. And
I think it's okay to be
that,
bad. Like I think that there's this kind of, what was that video that people made in like a few years ago where it's like why it's impolite to be bad at World of Warcraft? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually think it's okay to be just not that great or not want to take the game that serious. But as the end result, you know, the solution is, in my opinion, to just like skip the line. Like that to me feels kind of weird.
I guess when I think of gatekeeping, I think of the shameful part of it, or like the insulting part of it. Like, oh, you don't deserve to be in this guild because you're using the one button, or like you don't deserve to be at this IO because of resilient keys. It's not a matter of saying like deserving. It's more like, you know, what is the most fun experience, right? Like,
I'm addicted to improvement. Like personally, I'm just the most fun that I have in any video game, like TFT or anything else, is I'm addicted to watching myself get better. Like that is, I just get insane dopamine off of just getting better and like watching myself get better. That is like the most incredible dopamine that I get. And then you just remove that from
I mean, but I think I think we all know that is not how a lot of people play this game.
Well, that's fine. I think it's totally fine for them to not want to play the game that way. But at the same time, I don't think that there should be an expectation that they're going to play the game competitively. Like if they don't want to play the game competitively, then they shouldn't. Like they're not going to play the game competitively. I mean,
then why do they need to be doing X difficult? Like you can be very, very bad or have a very, very bad rotation and still do like quote unquote all of the content, right? You can experience the raid, you can see the raid bosses, you can go through the story, like. But there's a reason for difficulties, right? Like there's a reason that heroic exists and
there's a reason LFR exists, right?
And honestly, what's funny is you can talk about gear and you can say that the level of skill and teamwork required to get the best gear is too hard. And this is a whole path down a whole nother discussion, right? But to say that you can't experience the game, it's like, well, you can experience pretty much everything, like basically AFK, right? Like if you're, I'm pretty sure you could AFK through all of the heroic dungeons and all of LFR and still literally see everything, right? Or be only pressing Frostbolt or whatever, right? Doing the classic major.
You have follower dungeons. I mean, you have you genuinely have follower dungeons.
You do, yeah. Like I think like, that.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure. Like hypothetically, I don't think they will, but I think Warcraft logs could pretty easily flag the one button rotation from logs. I think you could probably deterministically, with reasonable accuracy, who is using the one button rotation from a couple of things, including from the rotation that they use to the GCDs between casts.
I don't like why. I don't like marking those people.
That was. I'm not done. Sorry.
Okay.
If they were to do that, let's say they put a flag on people that they think are using one button rotation.
To me, that goes into the gatekeeping category.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. Like, is this not just gatekeeping? Like, I'm pretty sure you guys are just exactly describing gatekeeping, which is that your kill, your activity doesn't count because you are not playing it in the way that I play.
But it's not about it not counting. It's a fundamental game design of like, okay, so from Blizzard's perspective, while it's true that they need to give people options on how to play, I also think that it's important that they create a path in which the incentives and the fun line up, right? So people are following this path of incentives, but then they're having fun while they go there, right? You know, for example, let's say they created this absolutely miserable, terrible grind that took an entire month, but then it gave you a 5% damage buff permanently for the whole season, right? Dude, everyone would be doing it, right? 5% damage, holy crap, right? To me, that's not really good game design. That's just, and you could just say, oh, if you don't want to do it, don't press it, like don't do the grind. But ultimately, like what makes a good game is that alignment of like, you know, creating good gameplay with good incentives. And so I think that this is not that, right?
I completely agree with you.
I'm not saying no, okay, and I'm not saying anything about like one thing I got flack on, and again, we can't go into resilient keys because the episode's already going long, but when I say like resilient keys basically allows you to sort of leapfrog up the system higher than normal, right? Because your key can't deplete. And ultimately you get to a point where you get into a really high key level. It's not a matter of, oh, you don't deserve to be in it. Like it has nothing to do with that, but like, you know, imagine you go into a plus 50 key, right? Like you're just eventually going to get to the point where you're having so little success that it's not fun and you're not ready to deal with the challenges, right? It's in that regard, right? I'm not saying that like, oh, you're like I'm not going to honor anybody's achievement of one button, or you don't deserve to be in a guild because you're one button. My point is like, dude, you're going to join a guild and then you're not going to have fun and you're going to quit. Like, that's what I'm worried about.
Entirely possible.
I mean, why we could do this in reverse? We could do this completely in reverse. Why not every boss just be patchwork and not have any mechanics? Right? Why not just like start altering the mechanics of bosses to make them not have any mechanics, and then the entire game is your rotation, your ability to be able to do your rotation. I don't think that's particularly fun either, right? Like I think that we start stripping away a lot of what makes WoW, and I would even go a step further. I would start looking at like GSE and cast sequence macros and strip all of those out of the game as well. But a very, very big caveat here that Blizzard actually reduces the skill ceiling on rotations. I 100% agree that I think the skill ceiling on rotations and the complexity of classes is way too high, but I don't think the answer is to allow people to bypass a lot of that complexity by just spamming one button. Yeah. Like that to me, I feel like is like the difference. Why wouldn't people use something like this in Classic? It's because you don't fucking need it in Classic, right? Like you dead ass do not need this in Classic. You're pressing one fucking button anyways, right? Like
so. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest thing is this is just a change. Like WoW has been a combination of a bunch of things for many, many years. Mythic rating is a combination of doing mechanics.
Yeah,
it's doing your rotation.
It's a dance.
Coordinated as a group. But now, whatever those pillars are that makes up Mythic rating or Mythic Plus or Heroic rating or whatever, they've just removed one of those pillars, or at least increased it. And so anytime there is a change, whether it's the YouTube fucking homepage every time they do it, or the front page of Google, or ad block, or any number of things, anytime there's any kind of UI change, people are going to freak out. And that's what I think the majority of this is. And whether or not it's good, who knows? We'll have to see how things evolve down the line, because people might just adapt and everything will be okay. Or they might not.
I would tend to be sad if people were told that they needed to use the one button rotation in absence of actually learning the rotation. And I'm scared that that's the path that we're about to go down, is that, and I've seen it. I saw it in some of my YouTube comments on the video that I made, where people were like, yeah, we had people at our guild starting to use it and they're actually improving. So I actually think this is good for the game because they're no longer dead weight. I'm like,
yeah, because I'm the guy who's not using it and someone else is doing more damage and I can play with them, right? Think of, really, in my opinion, the more I think about it, the more I really think it is selfishly, it's better for the people who aren't using it. It's there for the people who aren't using it. Also, I bring up this
tweet is fantastic.
Yes. So I saw this. I was talking with Word Up about it. And this is what I've talked about like a while back on the podcast, I'm pretty sure, which is like, this is what I think Blizzard needed to do instead of a rotation assist. I think this would help people learn the rotation so much more. Because none of this is like said in game.
Yeah, so for people who are listening on, hold on. So for people who are listening on audio, real quick, Word Up had a tweet. It is basically a photoshopped version of the Dungeon Journal, and it's basically a 2-page, very summarized explanation of your class. Like, okay, here's your important buttons. This is what your resource does. This is what your cooldown does. Basically, like a really, really abbreviated guide about your class in game to understand how it plays.
I think that I actually like the rotation assist highlight feature. I know it doesn't work that well currently, but I actually like the accessibility and the direction that they're taking that. But I do think it only works if you're also at the same time willing to put in a little bit of work to understand what your abilities do. And the current game does not tell you what buttons you're supposed to be pressing or why you're supposed to be pressing them. So if you're just playing light up whack-a-mole, you're never actually learning. It's the same reason I actually don't think you're learning whenever you're using the one button rotation, because you're just mashing this button over and over again. And without an action tracker that I'm using from details, I actually can't even, it just spits out an ability. I'm like, oh wow, they'd use that ability there. That's surprising.
So in what way is the highlight good then?
But the highlight is good because you're building muscle memory on the abilities, and it's kind of giving you, it's roughly telling you, it's kind of giving you guidance as to what you should be looking to press next. But if you read a guide and then you go practice your rotation on a dummies and you're using the highlight feature, and then you go back and read the guide again, and then you go back and continue to hit your rotation on the dummies, you're going to continue to get the hang of it more and more, and you're going to have a better fundamental understanding about why you're pressing the buttons that you're pressing.
Yeah. There's always going to be certain things that you're going to press in the same order. Like there's usually like 2 or 3 buttons for every spec that you're going to press in order or on cooldown. Right? Like for Havoc Demon Hunter's Blade Dance, you will kind of just generally learn that every time Blade Dance is up, it's going to tell you to press Blade Dance.
Yeah.
pretty straightforward there. Like that, there's small things that you can learn from that. But the reason that I like this so much is just because it actually tells you what to do. You know, when you go to your spec on the spellbook right now, it just says key abilities and then lists like 2 abilities, and sometimes they don't even fucking matter. And it doesn't tell you what to do with them, how to use them, when to use them, or like anything like that. And that's why I think like what Word Up has here mocked up as like key abilities, like, oh, Storm Strike. Like, this is how you generally use it. You know? It triggers Wind Fury weapon. That is really exciting. You know, Crash Lightning. This does splash damage. Okay, there's an interaction here. Like, there's a basic understanding of like why you actually press the button and not just press the button.
It doesn't have to be like this large thing either, right? Like, it could be like, for balance, it could be very condensed, where Balance Druid is a builder spender that maintains dots on a target. You always try to make sure Moonfire and Sunfire are applied. You spend on AoE with Starfall, you spend on single target with Star Surge, and you fill on AoE with Starfire, and you fill on single target with Wrath. Those are like roughly the mechanics, and you would teach somebody about how Eclipse works, and with the additional resource tab. And it doesn't have to be like this really intricate, you know, full comprehensive class guide thing, like something that you read on Wowhead. It can be a very small version of that, right? Where it's just like, this is roughly how to play the spec. Because I think that as it currently stands, it's really hard to just learn by yourself.
Yeah, I guess I just want to echo the fact that I worry that neither the one button or the highlight mode really teach you anything. I think that ultimately looking up a guide basically looking up a guide is how you learn a spec, and I think that better in-game tutorials or guides would go a long way. You know, they are doing these things like you know, the Dastardly Duos and all these little events. I would love to see some sort of, you know, mini tutorial system or some sort of single player content that actually teaches you how to do damage or you know, core rotational stuff. It's a little bit of a big undertaking, but I think it would go a long way. It's a little bit tough because classes change so much from you know, patch to patch, and that's I think the biggest barrier to it. But you know, I think like just little things like, you know, learning what to press in your cooldowns, or as a healer how to be mana efficient versus how to heal quickly, or as a tank, you know, how to space out your cooldowns so that you can live in for 1 minute. You know, like how many times have you seen somebody trying to learn tank, like, you know, go into PTR or whatever and like do the same first pull of a dungeon over and over again by themselves? Like, why isn't there something like that for a tank to go in? Like, I know there's like, you know, proving grounds or whatever silly stuff, but I think that I just wish they focused their energy towards more productive ways to improve, and also like simplifying some classes. I actually think they've done a better job with simplifying classes. I try not to harp on that too much because, at least from the scope of what I understand and play, things have been getting better.
I disagree, which is crazy. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Hold on.
I think Disc Priest has gotten significantly more reasonable as a class in terms of like rotational complexity. I think Mistweaver has gotten really, really improved. It has a lot, like Mistweaver is starting to build up problems lately because of how much they add to it and how many stacking multipliers it has. I think most of the healers are pretty reasonable. They're not super, super rotationally complex.
You mean to tell me that Disc Priest, the Void Weaver playstyle, is simple? Let me just...
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's like one of the... Yeah, Void Weaver, it's like one of the... Oh, yeah. No.
You think it's more simple than what Disc was in BFA?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Void Weaver... Okay, well, from a power level perspective, Void Weaver is a little bit wonky, is why you don't see people playing it in high keys. No. Disc Priest is... Disc Priest has gotten significantly easier. Oracle was a little bit of a wonky learning curve because the hero talent ability was so impactful.
Insanely weird,
and it's very different. Yeah, it's very impactful, and it's nothing that Priest has ever had, so you really have to like think about it a lot. But no, they've done a really good job with button bloat and rotational complexity with Disc Priest.
I don't know. For me, it's like one of those things that I think that continuing to add more additional buttons via hero talents and really strange interactions, where at least, you know, I think that, you know, pressing Mind Blast on CD and making sure that you have these perfect ramps as a Disc Priest with your pet and stuff like that, that creates a level of gameplay that isn't intuitive for most people, because it's not this, you know, press
yeah,
heal
I mean, that's
button.
definitely, but to be fair, just like Okay, so the fact that in Raid you have to do these like 12 button Mortal Kombat fatalities every time you need to heal, that's been basically a thing for like basically since MOP, I think, right? Like that's been a thing for a long
Maybe.
time. I guess I was thinking more so in the mind of Mythic Plus. I definitely agree with you that Disc Priest in Raid is not intuitive at all for people. And like you look at dude, I'll have people be like, "Hey, I'm playing Disc, I'm really struggling," and I'll look at their logs and it's like I don't even know how I could put it into perspective of like a DPS.
They're just
like,
pressing the wrong fucking buttons.
they're just pressing buttons, right? They're just like, oh, Radiance here, and right here. It's like, no. You didn't even. You got to learn the fatalities, man. Up, down, left, right, up, A, B.
But without knowing the combos, it's hard, and I think that like pretty much every class is like that right now, where you have to know all the elaborate combos of abilities.
Yeah,
that you're supposed to press in very
I guess maybe. I mean, Moonkin isn't that hard, right?
No, Moonkin's actually one of the specializations that I actually think has come down in terms of complexity compared to where it has been in the past. But I think that hero talents even still have a added layer of complexity that I think that Moonkin got more complicated from the end of Dragonflight until now because of the addition of hero talents. I mean, hero talents are polarizing for your gameplay, right? They're making buttons. They add a bunch of modifiers to buttons, so they change how you play.
It's possible. I think that, yeah, I mean, okay, they're definitely going in random directions. I think in general, complexity or like button bloat has gone down, but it is true that with it, maybe specifically button bloat has gone down, but when it comes to rotational complexity, like they replaced button bloat with tons of modifiers that you need to be aware of and stacking and combos.
And I think that's the bigger thing there.
That's definitely true.
We need to make sure this isn't like a 3 episode. We gotta get the show on the fucking road. Okay, so we didn't actually talk about the raid side of stuff with the 11.2 interview last time. Squishy, what are the most important things that you think we should start looking at with the raid focused stuff from the interview?
The biggest thing was they see difficulty from Mythic Raid in a couple different spots. And they feel like the twitchy aspect of like dodging lasers and dodging swirlies can possibly be pulled back a bit.
Okay.
Going forwards.
So like the micro of movement?
Yeah. Where did they say that? I don't exactly remember.
The twitchiness of gameplay.
Yeah. So I think that's like a really, really good thing because as of recently, especially as a caster, I'm sure you know, there's just a bunch of shit to dodge and you're like always moving.
Yeah.
Like it's been a lot. They've definitely ramped it up.
It's interesting. I wonder what they mean whenever they say twitchiness of gameplay. Is that purely micro on like a dodge kind of situation, or is that more of like on a strategy level? Because I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where they've actually cut down on every single patch for the last like couple of expansions, they've gone away from we have job doers in our raids, and now they have random people being assigned, and everybody's eligible to do a mechanic. And I wonder if that's also kind of included here.
They describe it above. There's difficulty that can come from your ability to control your character, dodge lasers, pick up bombs, carry them from place to place.
Okay.
That's what they're describing when they call it like on that.
The first one of those, the twitchiness of gameplay. Okay. So it's less about randomness. I guess I would describe it, and it's more about like individual micro on dodge, laser, pick up bomb, move character in 3D space from point A to point B.
Yeah, just
sort
probably
of
like decision.
Well, also, I guess I see this a little bit from a Mythic Plus point of view too, but it is true in Raid of like trying, like also talking about the disarmament of weak auras and the idea of not making these really super complex mechanics that have to be solved by weak auras or that people use add-ons for.
Yeah.
And I think in general, when they remove these things, or when in Mythic Plus, when they remove like needing tons of mobs with tons of kicks, ultimately it comes down to creating difficulty does end up kind of making a lot of bosses feel samey, in that they're like a bullet hell essentially, right? Like, while it's true that they've improved the visuals with swirlies and stuff, it does feel like there's a whole lot more swirlies this expansion and lines and shit that you have to dodge, rather than, oh, how do we solve this mechanic, or knowing what to do or how to do it. And I feel like they're sort of finding this middle ground, and I think they're sort of acknowledging the fact that, okay, well, bullet hell and melee can be terrible sometimes with visibility, and bullet hell in range can feel bad because it's like you're not even playing your character and you're having to like interrupt casts, and it's just like, you know,
Yeah.
not like at some point, you know, you can plan around it. Like I guess I think of a fight like I know this is a raid discussion, but talking about Cujo in Mythic Plus, and it's like, you know, from a planning perspective, it's like, okay, you know, you're gonna go behind the box, you know, when your damage windows are, you get punished if you don't use them properly. It's not necessarily fun. Like Cujo is not a fun boss, but from a planning perspective, like you can still do good damage on a boss like that. But then if it's like, you know, imagine Cujo, but it's like bullet hell the whole time during the window in
Yeah.
between the boxes. It's like, what are you even supposed to do?
Something Squishy's said many times, and I think it kind of resonates pretty hard with this, is like it's always easier if you're just given more time. Like Tendril Sage Swift Seeds, I think is probably the culmination of the hardest version of like anything that they could have done from this twitchiness that's described here, where if Tendril Sage Swift Seeds launched and they're 10 seconds long as opposed to 3, feels very different, right?
Yeah. The other thing that they mentioned was a topic called affordance right there.
Affordance of time. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, which is essentially like, which is exactly what we just talked about, which is like when players don't get enough time. And they basically agreed that there were a couple of very twitchy fights in Liberation of Undermine. So they said they're going to pay close attention to areas of affordance in the next raid. So
I think they have to, especially if they're looking to try to get rid of a bunch of weak ores and stuff like that. If they're looking to cut back on add-ons just in general, I think that the average time of a mechanic is probably like the most important thing that they need to be factoring in every single time.
Yeah, for the people that don't understand the whole war against add-ons or where people are coming from here, one of the biggest things in raid that people struggle with is the fact that, well, you go into a raid fight and you can pretty much just have weak orders tell you what to do and everything, right? Like, oh, stand here, go to X, go to triangle. And ultimately, well, if the game is telling you exactly what to do, the only challenge is being able to do it fast enough and being able to do your damage while you're doing it, right? And it's like, that's just not really that fun gameplay. Like, ultimately, the fun thing should be like, okay, you're looking at your screen and you're deciding what's the best path and where do I need to go and where are my friends going or whatever. And well, they do need to give you more time for that, right? Like if you only have 3 seconds to do something, how the heck, you know, you just need to have some image flowchart raidplan.io and stand in your one freaking spot and then get angry at the one guy who was off by 10 degrees at the different angle or whatever. And that just isn't very fun ultimately. But they do need to limit the strength and power of these add-ons in order to accomplish that, to make it back to like actually thinking on the fly and deciding what you need to be doing.
So here's the problem. They need to be very aware of this even after they remove add-ons. Because if a thing is too difficult, with the additional time, if you get the mechanic, you're going to alt-tab and click a button that says, I got this mechanic, and then it's going to assign you a position outside of the game. And there's nothing Blizzard can do against that. So the important thing that they need to learn is if things are too hard, you know that's true.
Dude, that's such dog shit. That's why I'm laughing.
But that's
so
the thing.
bad.
Nobody will make that if it's easy enough to do by yourself. If it's fun to do with your raid group, that tool will not be made, and therefore it won't be needed. So it's really on Blizzard here to solve the issue, regardless if add-ons are taken away or not, because the add-ons will be made, and calculators will be made outside the game if they don't give people enough affordance still.
It's like,
and then I hope you have a second monitor.
It's like private auras. Just because you private aura'd Neltharion bombs doesn't mean that we have enough time to do Neltharion bombs natty, right? Like you private aura'd it. We still don't have enough time to do it natty. We have to figure out a way around it. Like there's not an option.
Yeah. Like realistically, in the amount of time you took it, like let's say they try to do it normally, and because of the pixel precision, like if they give you 10 seconds, it's entirely possible that you could spread out correctly. You can see where people are going. But maybe they make it 8 seconds, and that's just not quite enough.
Sure.
So now you have to alt-tab every time you get it to click a thing, and it tells you where to go.
That would be terrible. All right, what did they say on information asymmetry or communication fights?
I think we talked a little bit about it last time, but they like the idea in coordinated groups. They're removing the Hillbrand stuff from the from Mythic Plus, but it's going to be in the Mega Dungeon still.
I think that's pretty reasonable. It's kind of a question as to like where do they draw the line on what a coordinated group is supposed to be? Like, are coordinated groups only supposed to be mythic raids? Are they also supposed to be heroic raids? Like, where are the coordinated groups supposed to start? Kind of, that's something that you kind of have to figure out.
That bar is getting pushed up more and more and more.
Oh,
right? Like we're seeing that previously you'd expect, if you're doing plus 14 or whatever, that you're in Discord. Now that's just not the case. Like people have this expectation that you can pug an 18 or a 19, and I think that that's just the direction the game is going, because that's the direction the players want. And while it's tough, right? Because again, we go back to this, playing in coordinated groups is more fun, but ultimately, people want to pug more and more and more.
It's a state of gaming thing.
I mean, we're literally waiting for the wall to break, right? Where Blizzard eventually just allows Mythic Raid to be puggable, because we're constantly talking about the lockout and all this, and it's only a matter of time, right? Like the direction the game is going until Mythic Raid is puggable.
I don't even think that's necessarily what they're saying here. There was an unwillingness when the Hillbrand boss first came out to even fucking type to your group about what was happening. You look at other games and they will type, like, they will ask for some kind of communication. Destiny will type out like a pattern of A, B, C, D so that people know what's going on, or like have an order of what you type in so the color of the orders is known to the group. Lost Ark does the same thing. Final Fantasy does the same thing. Like, all other games coordinate in chat. They don't even need voice.
Dude, I can't think of something that's less fun than like typing in the middle of a fight, though.
Every guild, like, if you don't want to use voice,
you
kind of have no other choice.
Yeah.
But like there is enough time to type it on Hillbrand. I've done it before.
I mean, I sort of agree with Settles, though. Is like, that's pretty bad gameplay, though. No, like Hillbrand is immune, and then you're just standing there waiting for the guy to type, and then he types the symbols, and then you just walk. Like, I don't know. Like, okay, maybe it's fun the very first time you do the dungeon as you're figuring out how to do it, but like, that's not very fun gameplay, right? Like, I think unless it is really fast paced where you're required to like think on the fly and be in voice, any mechanic that's that slow that you can literally type it and then do it, for the most part, I think is like pretty not fun. No, like, can you guys think of like examples of mechanics where you type them and it's like, oh, that was so fun that we just did that?
I'd argue that any communication mechanic should be typable because they need to give you enough time. Any communication mechanic needs additional time because you're communicating and working with other members of your team. Therefore, you have enough time to type.
This may be an issue of like we're a little bit too sweaty, and we kind of think about it from the perspective of like we got to get out of this intermission ASAP. Like there's no
like it's very different raid designs, right? Like other games have a lot of immune phases where you need to solve a puzzle as a team with a group. That is your entire purpose. You don't even need to worry about damage. Your only goal is to get out of this intermission as a group alive.
I mean,
but you would argue that the Hillbrand thing is like a pretty fucking weak puzzle, right? Like to even call that a puzzle is a little bit of a stretch.
Let's talk about Lords of Dread. Would typing Lords of Dread be fun? You had enough time. You had 30 seconds.
No, Lords of Dread was a horrible mechanic and should never be.
Well, I'm just like asking, like, would typing about like, what imposters do you see on Lords of Dread being an acceptable mechanic?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Ignore the fact that the boss fucking sucks. Like that's. Yeah, that guy.
Realistically, like it was arguably easier than requiring everybody to have a weak aura for pugs and making sure they had the right weak aura and knew how to use the weak aura to just type the names of the people that you see in chat.
Yeah,
but people just went for the weak aura because that was the norm. And I 100% easier if I just like typed Tettles Growl and you saw 2 more lists of Tettles and Growl in chat, you just know that it's Tettles and Growl. You should kill them.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know, other people, I just fucking don't read chat whenever I'm doing a boss. Like, I'm doing a dungeon, I never read chat. I'm doing a boss, I never read chat. I don't even know what it is.
I completely agree with you. And that's just due to the way that WoW's like raid and dungeon designs are.
Yeah.
Is whenever you need to type in other games, there's a full break in combat. There's no healing that needs to be done. There's no damage that needs to be done. There's no like dodging, that kind of thing a lot of the time. It's just solve the puzzle. Or solve the mechanic, then get back to doing what you need to do.
WoW's pacing is really weird because if you had to do that in the middle of the fight, it's like I'm wasting precious seconds on my timer. I'm sitting in traffic.
Yeah,
like, I'm sitting in traffic. Like, ironically, I'm just.
Or like I'm dying, or like the boss is pulsing AOE. We need to break a shield while this is happening. Like I've said this before. If Kil'jaeden were to be done again, instead of him being immune during the intermission, you would need to break a shield.
Holy shit.
Like, am I wrong?
The flying around phase where he's knocking you?
Yeah, where you're getting knocked from corner to corner. He would 100% have a shield
Dude,
that you need to break
would be
in this day and age.
That fight would be demonic.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Dude, that fight, I don't think that fight would exist in this current day and age because I'm pretty sure people would complain too much about it.
I remember for Kill Jaden, Armageddon was rated the hardest ability to do correctly, and I'm pretty sure people would like destroy that fight now.
I think that ability is still fucking hard. That was a 20-player soak. Like,
no, was it?
Okay, it wasn't in the sense of you had to have all 20 players participate.
Okay, yes, that I agree with.
Yeah, like it was, and you couldn't soak 2 in a row. You couldn't soak 2 back to back. You had to like have alternating people, and so you had people like split up into quadrants, and it was just a really fucking hard mechanic. And the problem was if you soaked 2 back to back, somebody's dying, you're just like ripping your B-res on it. I don't know. I still think that fight was really hard. That obelisk mechanic is. People would be bad at that mechanic today still.
Oh, people are bad at the mechanic. But I think that's a mechanic that I think...
That's a timelessly difficult mechanic.
one person needs to solve that for your raid, which I think is a perfectly fair mechanic.
I thought it was fair. Yeah, I thought it was fair, but I thought it was very hard.
Yeah.
A funny anecdote about typing. I was doing a 20 theater with Ryerson, who's like the number 1 rated Prez Evoker, or at least for sure on NA. And we were doing the Zav boss, right, on a 20, and it just one-shot somebody, and then I get pinged after the guy gets one-shot. And I'm just like, why am I being pinged? So I look at the chat, and he typed in the chat mass barrier because we weren't in comms, right? And then I look, and every single slam that Zab was doing, he was typing like personals, Zephyr, mass barrier, like every single one, because we don't have a disc freeze, right? So he can't shield. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is just how it is. And it's like funny how I don't know, there's this like communication that you start getting used to when you're pugging, and like no comms of like pinging people. Like you'll like ping yourself if you're gonna use your stops, or like the healer will ping the DK to use AMZ on like a boss or whatever.
I think those are great tools for not having voice. Like if you're not gonna use voice, you have to come with another communication system, and pings are the perfect way to do that.
Well, so here, this is my biggest problem, I guess, when it comes to the raid or mythic mechanics in general, is like, if you want to be some demonic person and do a 20 theater with no comms with a Prez Evoker and Jangbi, that's on you. There's no incentive to do that 20 theater. That's your own problem, right? Like, Squishy will never have to go through this in his life. But if I want to get the best gear in the game, I have to do these. I have to do Mythic Lords of Dread, right? Like, I have to figure out how to do this. And it's like, that's sort of the problem I have with the communications or, like, mechanical difficulty in general is, like, you know, when you look at a game like Final Fantasy, like, it's funny to think about it because in Final Fantasy, you can cheat, right? Like, there are basically cheats that people use in the raid that are like, but like, who cares, right? Like, what are you gaining by doing some ultimate raid and then just cheating and then beating it? And then, okay, now your guild beat it, like, woohoo, you know? But in WoW, there's just this whole, not only is there the gear aspect, but there's a super hyper competitive part about it, right? Like of, you know, oh, we need to do it. And what hours do we raid in our guild rank and all this Hall of Fame? And it's like, I don't know. It's a lot of people who play more casually probably hear us and laugh and think like, dude, why are you doing this raid and then just tabbing out and using a program to solve it? Like, how is this not cheating? But that's just what people do. And then, like, you know, you want to be in a good guild because you want to get good gear, but like, you know, you care about guild rank and all this. And part of it too is a problem, not to go on it, you know, part of it's a problem with 20-man too, you know. If you could raid in a smaller size, you could more likely be in a group of people that are more close-minded to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, I mean, the accessibility problems of like mythic raiding, I think, are always going to be tough challenges to solve. At the same time, yeah, I think just to mirror the sentiment, I think that there's a certain level of the game in which Blizzard doesn't necessarily expect you to get in voice, but you're told by what's going on in the game that you're supposed to be in voice. Like, the mechanics are just like either ridiculous or you know, you're getting one shot and you're going to need to actually coordinate like stops and CC and stuff like that.
Yeah, an interesting question from the interview that you asked, and you didn't quite draw this parallel, but
these interviews, by the way.
yeah, you had some banger questions. You mentioned more about throughput checks like One Arm Bandit, but I actually thought that all of the bosses in this raid were like very, very similar in Prague, in that it would be like so One Arm Bandit, Muggsy, and Gallywix was sort of like the first half or whatever of the fight was like this sort of dance, like mechanics check. You don't really, you could hold damage, but you didn't. I guess maybe you did. But then there's like an execute, burn, like race to the finish, lust at the end, right? Like, wasn't that like all three of those bosses you lust at the end, and like the end phase is like a burn timer, like.
Gally, you
know what
lusted
I'm
on
saying?
pole.
Not Gally, but the other two, yeah.
Yeah, I guess for Galley, I kind of feel well nowadays it's like so easy, but like you get down to the pies. Like Gallywix is on a timer, right? Like there's definitely a timer towards the end where like
You were supposed
you're losing space.
I think you're probably
Maybe it was
supposed to lust.
maybe okay, so
lust
maybe
phase.
maybe it was supposed to feel that way, but it wasn't really. But that's kind of I guess on Galley. Okay, on Gallywix it didn't matter as much, but that was kind of the vibe that I got of like they really it was like the first half of the fight is like really heavy mechanics, and then there was like this sort of like burn ending, like race to the finish sort of thing. And it feels like they're kind of doing that more and more in raid bosses. I don't know if I really had a point to that other than I kind of noticed that pattern with this raid.
Yeah, I mean, stop DPS came back for the first time in a while, which I don't think anybody was exactly happy about.
I mean, having played out the fights, I feel like it feels less bad than it did in the past, at least.
Oh,
right?
because you're not doing it 3 times per encounter, but
yeah.
like,
I mean, the stop DPS is what Mug and Bandit to make sure that you don't push it like a really weird time.
Yeah, I feel like, dude, to me at least, a lot of the whole DPSs seem so easily fixable. No, like I feel like the whole DPSs for One Arm Bandit or for Muggsy especially is like I don't know. Like,
well, that's because you don't have like healing and offensive CDs available, so you actually just want to sit there and wait. For Bandit, it's because of how the ads function, right?
But like, could they not like do if they're gonna do a burn phase? Like, I don't know. Couldn't that be a cool thing that they do, where they like when you do like a big phase on a boss like that, it just like refreshes everybody's CDs? Like, wouldn't that be kind of fun too?
That would be fucking crazy. You're cooking.
Yeah, like to me, like the whole I don't know. It just seems like okay. So I was doing it on my mage, and it's like it feels so weird, right? To be like, well, like if we send our CDs, then the boss is gonna push, and then we don't have our CDs for the important part. But then if we don't send our CDs, then the boss doesn't put. And it's just like it feels so dumb. Like how do they not? How can they not fix this?
Squishy said it's because it doesn't happen 3 times a fight. I actually think the difference is because you didn't have to stop during prog, and you only actually start stopping once you have very specific kill times because you're doing too much DPS.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly.
I mean, like, dude, if you like, whatever you have to stop on prog, stopping 3 times on Painsmith and stopping like twice on Sylvanas during progression was just like,
oh yeah, it was much more egregious before for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That tier was something else.
It was.
Kel'Thuzon was just the worst shit ever too.
All right.
Anything else from this interview that you wanted to bring up?
No.
Okay. All right.
Squishy throws the raid lockout question and then gets denied as always.
do Growls first. Do Growls first.
Okay. All right. So what do we got this week for cool stuff that we've seen this week, Growl?
All right. So as a regular thing on the show that we actually haven't talked about in a long time, there's a new way to get a buff and then take it into competitive content, and this time is the Midsummer Fire Festival buff. So basically, there's a currency for this event. There's one in Dornegal, there's one in Stormwind or whatever your major town is. There are probably lots of these all over. Basically, you earn the currency, which is these flowers, by doing these silly little quests that are very easy to do at the events, and then you go to the fire pit and you throw the flower in the fire pit and you get a 1 hour crit buff that gives you 3% increased critical strike.
What's the name of the buff?
I linked it to you.
Oh, you linked it.
It's and it's a flask, to be clear.
I fully expect this to get fixed soon. Basically, I'm just mentioning this for you to get mad that you didn't figure this out before. But the thing about this is it counts as a flask buff. And while you might think, oh, this is kind of cool, like, it's maybe slightly stronger than a flask, but you can't use a flask. Well, in order to gain the buff, you have to take off your flask. So what you do is you take off your flask, click it off, then get the fire buff, then reapply your flask, and then you get both. It counts as like an old school battle elixir and not an actual flask. So if you have a flask active, it will not give you this buff, but if you click your flask off, so now for optimal resilient gaming, every time you deplete a key, you go back to Dornagal, you click off your flask, and then you throw the flower in, you get the buff, you use a new flask, then you go back to your key and start it again. 3% critical strike is a lot. I'm pretty sure
It is.
yeah, this is a pretty big buff, especially for certain classes. I very like
It's
I don't
better
know.
than some classes raid buff, huh?
Like, look, whether or not they decide to fix this tomorrow, or they decide this is just this week's turbo boost or belt or whatever, and we just are now 3% critically strike stronger. But I figured this is like pretty well known. I've been seeing people do this on streams. Like you should use this if it's in the game.
Kettles.
All right, what is this? I don't have anything. What is this?
Okay, well, we're ending on this. This was a gift from last podcast, clipped by Gork. And thanks everyone for watching.